Good evening. I'd like to call to order the Lakewood City Council study session in the city of Lakewood, Colorado for June 5th, 2017, 7 p.m. in council chambers. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Paul?
Here.
Coop?
Here.
Wickman? Gutwein?
Here.
Franks?
Here.
Harrison? Here. Roybal?
Here.
Vincent?
Here.
Abel?
Here.
Johnson?
Here.
Shakti?
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Welcome to everybody who came out tonight. Appreciate you taking the time out of your beautiful summer evening to come hang out with us in council chambers. Just a quick note of personal privilege before we start. I'd like to wish our council president, Pete Roybal, a happy birthday. And his birthday wish is that we're done by 8. I guess since I told him it's not going to happen. So tonight we are here. We're going to have a follow-up presentation regarding concerns existing to parking, something that we've had conversations about in the past, and this is council's real first study session to start to look at the issues and try to get a better understanding and look for a path forward. Not necessarily finding a solution tonight, but beginning those conversations, I think, is the hopeful outcome. So with that, I will open public comment, and for those of you who are not familiar with public comment at a study session, it is relative only to the presentation or topic at hand, which is parking. If you'd like to come back on the second and fourth Mondays, we have public comment on anything you'd like to talk about. And I mean anything. So with that said, let's see here. Okay, Diane Duffy, you are first. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council, Diane Duffy. You've seen me up here before. With regard to parking, I just wanted to remind you of the presentation that the Advisory Commission did in March. And we started with some of the things that are already in our ordinances. And I think you all received an email today with some pictures at an elementary school. Now, if you look at this, there was a picture of a Jeep parked in the middle of a crosswalk. There was a car parked right by a fire hydrant. There was someone parked across the middle of somebody's driveway. Those things are already in our code, and I think enforcement is just what's needed. Those are things that are already in our code, and we don't really need to address. We did present a lot of information, and looking at some of the other municipalities and what they do, they've gone a little further than we have with their parking violations. But they've looked at a lot more than just schools and parks. They've looked at the neighborhoods too. And this issue, as we presented back in March, is more than just those issues. This is a citywide issue. And there was a presentation which we attached to our presentation back then that the city had done in 2012. And they decided there was no changes needed. There was another study done by the city in 2013. Again, no changes needed. When ACIC looked at this year and we did our presentation in March, we really said there really should be some changes and the city should really look at this. So I thank you for having this study session now. I hope you will take it a step further. Look at our recommendations that we had back then. Look at what your staff will present to you tonight. And it's time to make some changes. There's so many things going on in our city. The house across the street from me has it's a big house, 4-car garage. They also have 9 cars in their front yard. 9, not cars, cars and trailers, 9 of them. Our code allows for 7, which is too many. And if you look at what we presented in our proposal that the ACIC had researched, nobody else allows 7 cars in your front yard. The high density, when I started my research with ACIC, I called the Lakewood Police Department. I asked for a list of violations. I said, can I have this by area and by type of violation? And he said, oh, for heaven's sakes, Diane, we don't need to run you a report. It's by any high school or park or high-density apartment complex. That's where the violations occur. We don't need to run you a report to tell you that. So thank you for looking at this tonight. There's a lot of issues on the table, and I'm sure you'll take a good look at all of them. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So, and not that you went over, but I forgot to mention that 3 minutes, yes. So for those of you who may not be familiar, the little light up here will go green. When 2.5 minutes is up, it'll glow yellow or orange, and when your time's up, red, and we'll politely wrap you up, if we could. Tracy Bowen.
Do you need my address?
Nope, looks like we have it.
Okay. So I am the parent of a Lakewood High School sophomore, and since he turned 16, he, in 15 weeks, got 3 parking tickets, which are not $20 and $25, they are $50. And I can see the challenges, but I feel like what we all, as the city, the parents, need to do is talk to the school board. They are the ones that are going to be able to open a gate on 9th to let disabled fans into baseball games. They are the ones that are going to be able to redesign the parking lot. When I went to Lakewood High School 150 years ago, we had plenty of room. So we need to put a lot of pressure on the school board to make this problem go away. The city can't water the parking lot and make it grow. Jeffco Schools has to do that. But, you know, some of us do go to the board meetings, and right now it is just completely falling on deaf ears. We need the most amount of people, the most noise. We need to be the squeaky wheel. I will also say in that token, the parking pass is way cheaper than the tickets. So get your kid in line and get a parking pass.
Thank you. James DeAndrea. Good evening. Welcome back.
Good evening, Mayor. Happy Monday, Council. Happy birthday, Mr. Roybal. Hey, guys, we're back here again for the issues we're having with the parking and all the issues that go along with that with us folks that live by Lakewood High School. So the Lakewood High School has taken over our neighborhood, so us folks that live on 8th Avenue, 9th Avenue, myself on Hoyt, we are now part of Lakewood High School. Now, of course, with that, we don't get any of the benefits, so I don't get any reduction in what I pay in taxes. I also take a hit in property values because people don't want to live by a sports complex and have their kids get run over. But I understand certain people's feelings that we need to get the school involved. We've tried, and their opinion is the streets are public streets, and everybody from the school should utilize them, and that the homeowners should give up their rights and their property for the school. This started about 5 years ago when we came here and begged for permit parking, and a few of the folks went along with it. I don't know if Dana, Barb, Karen, Sharon, Miss Shakti, and even Scott Coop was part of that marked it down. But permit parking is done all over Denver. It's done in Arvada, and it's extremely successful, and we got no help from the city of Lakewood. But there are many people here to talk tonight. We need your help more than ever. It has ruined our quality of life, our way of life, and we have no life. Thank you all for your time. Thank you.
Brian. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor, Council Representatives. Brian Weishar, 9500 West 9th Avenue. I've been up here quite a few times. You've all seen me. You know who I am. I started this whole conquest with parking 5 years ago. We went to Mr. Hutchinson and Ben Wasserman, then the traffic engineer, and asked for help, and they gave us help. They did what we asked for. They helped our neighbors. We wanted to get some solution. Now we're asking the city, please look at your parking issue. And I think it's mainly this thing about the 0.5. The 0.5 is, that's what the city mandates, that these apartment complexes, townhomes, schools, businesses, whatever it is, only have to have 0.5. And I think that needs to be upped. I really do. Because then if it's up to 1 to maybe 1.5, then we can have, the parking issues would probably be resolved. I need you to look at that hard and long. And, you know, I don't want to fight with people. I want to make a solution here. Let's get the school board, again, like two of my constituents have said, let's get the school board to talk about this. Let's quit bickering. Let's get down to the table, put our cards down and say, what do we need? What can we help with? And I think with the city, with the school board, with everybody there at the table, I think we can come up with some good concrete solutions. And I know you can do it. I have faith in every one of you. Thank you again, Mayor, council people. I trust you that you will do a good job for us, and thank you.
Thank you. Randy Wood? Good evening, welcome.
Mayor and council members, my wife and I, we recently purchased a property at 955 Independence. It's Independence in 9th Avenue. I'm sure you're all very familiar with that. It's been vacant for years, and we're doing our very best to get it back to where it's very respectable so that property values are good, et cetera. But this parking issue, and I know that there's issues with the high school right there, not enough, and a lot of times that they're parked right in front of our house, so I cannot get in, I cannot get my trailer in to do things, to do yard work and things like that. I mean, and we're right there on the corner. It'd be great if we could have some no parking there, but I also understand that we need to work with the school district, et cetera, to figure out what we can do with some of this parking so that our property values stay up and it is respectable for everyone that's involved there. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for coming out. Robert Hunsicker and looks like Bethel. Another name. Good evening.
I'm here representing Bethel Biblical, and we're the church right next door to the gentleman that just spoke. And it's putting a burden on our congregation on Sunday and some Saturdays when we have events going on. Our parking lot is to the max, and with the restriction now, people that are guests or visitors come in when we have special events have no place to park. The way I see it is the school's definitely got to do something with their parking issue because, as you know, Colorado economy is good. State's growing. More and more people are coming, meaning more and more kids are coming to school. More and more kids are driving earlier. But it's not stopping the kids from parking on the street during the week, during the daytime hours. It affects us on Wednesday night service, Sunday morning, and Sunday afternoon if we have an event when the kids are trying to do the sports. So to be real absurd, if you eliminate sports activities for all the kids in Lakewood, then that would solve the issue with the parking problem, but that's really not an answer to the solution. But I would recommend that something gets done so that it does not hinder our growth as a church in the community. There are 2 other churches on the street besides ours, and it affects all of us. And I still see cars parking Sundays where it says no parking on 9th Avenue. When I came out of church Sunday, there were 4 vehicles that were still parking where it says no parking. So there is an issue, there is a problem, and hopefully we can come to some resolution. We need more parking spaces, and we're locked into our area right there.
Thank you. Ralph Johnson? Mr. Johnson? Okay. We'll go to Alan Heald. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, councilors, and happy birthday, Mr. Roybal. I'm Alan Heald, and I live in Green Mountain Estates. And having adequate parking, I think, begins with planning. So my comments are about parking, but I'll talk about the role of planning in that as I see it. Growth does not always have to cause problems. I mean, we've seen good growth, we've seen bad growth. So how does growth actually create problems? I think that tends to happen when you have a lack of upfront planning. When a school is expanded due to their expanded need, and the school system does nothing to provide for additional student vehicles, no additional parking spaces, no busing to alleviate more kids with cars. This creates the parking problem, and it's essentially a manifestation of poor planning. Poor planning in expanding a business. If your business is growing and you have nowhere to go because you hadn't planned for growth, impacts on, like in the case of CCU, on nearby neighborhoods are being felt. People are angry. These are issues now the city has to wrestle with. And my thought here is that more planning up front could prevent having to wrestle with these problems on the backside. It all kind of centers around growth, and we all know that. Developer Charles Frazier said regarding growth, he said the use of property ought to be planned because when development is allowed to occur without control, the result can be a form of destruction. Well, we've heard a lot of comments from neighborhood residents about destruction due to growth. Regarding Lakewood, when rampant growth happens in our community, some call it inevitable, some say that it's just progress, others just call it development. When rampant growth happens in an individual, we call it cancer. It is time for Lakewood government to stand up for Lakewood citizens who are threatened by rampant or poorly managed growth that creates these issues like parking. Our community does not benefit when growth is out of control and from a lack of proper planning. The proper planning in the past, as schools were expanded, is now leading to the problem you guys have to wrestle with tonight. So you have a choice. Going forward, you can create more problems like these and take pride in the fact that maybe you grew Lakewood, or you can choose not to repeat the growth mistakes. And that's my main message, really, is let's let the past inform the present and come up with a solution for impacted people and neighborhoods. But most importantly, let's inform the present so we can have a better future and not just recreate these problems for ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you. Kira Degree? Good evening.
Good evening, council members, Mr. Mayor. Happy birthday, Pete. My name's Kira. I live at 75 South Garrison, and I feel so grateful to live in a neighborhood and a city that has so many involved neighbors. At the Ward 1 meeting this past weekend, there were so many people who came with fantastic ideas to begin to solve the complex parking problem. I completely agree with my neighbors who are concerned about emergency vehicles not being able to get down their streets, or not about having parking for their family and friends. These are real issues, and it seems we need more than one solution to solve them. As I've been walking around neighborhoods and getting to talk with people about possible parking solutions, I've heard some really great ideas. I loved Charlie's idea about using the parking lot at Jeffco Stadium and getting a shuttle for students. I heard neighbors mention parking permits, which residents could perhaps rent to students. It's also worthwhile to look into the way Boulder worked with RTD to expand and improve their public transportation. It may take these and other ideas to fully solve this issue. I'm a member of the South of Six Sustainable Neighborhood, which Lakewood High School is also in. And I'd love to partner with the school to see if any students would like to take on a bike to school project. I think this would be a wonderful opportunity for the neighborhood to partner with the school to build community while also relieving some of the parking issues. It could give kids experience in urban planning, sustainability, and leadership, and get more cars off the road. Perhaps local businesses in the area could even partner with the school in order to give students who ride their bike or walk to school incentives. This gives students an opportunity to be a part of the conversation and the solution, and I'd be happy to facilitate this program. One of the many things I love about Lakewood is the tagline, "We're building an inclusive community." And I think including students, the school, local businesses, and neighbors in this conversation is in line with that mission. Thanks.
Thank you. Anita Springsteen? Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Anita Springsteen. I'm speaking regarding group homes of 12 or more in residential neighborhoods, which is really the equivalent of multifamily spillover into single-family neighborhoods. In the 12-person group home across the street from me for memory care, people constantly park in front of my house, even when the group home's driveway and frontage is empty. They have at least 50 cars coming and going in a day, as well as emergency services. My elderly parents, who have recently had a stroke and cancer, are prevented from parking in a safe place in front of my house as a result. People constantly park in front of my mailbox. A group home staffer's boyfriend almost backed into my 5-year-old getting mail out of the mailbox a month ago. People trample my grass and plants due to the fact that we have no sidewalks. The group home's lawn service has blocked my elderly neighborhood's access to oxygen delivery. Because it's a home business, parking should be confined by city ordinance 17.4.3.1 M.7, confining parking to street frontage and driveway. But the police have refused to enforce this ordinance. So I think this is really a citywide problem with regard to higher density, and we ask for your help with this. Thank you.
Thank you. Ruth Larkin? Good evening, welcome.
Good evening. I didn't expect to be called so early since I signed up so late. I was enjoying all the notes. Well, I would like to represent the kids of Lakewood High School, because while we're hearing from the neighborhood, I've got 3 teenagers in that school right now. I'm fortunate that next year all 3 get a parking pass, so they will not be bothering any neighbors. Their cars will be on the school parking grounds. However, I feel a couple things that need to be represented here, too. I was a Title IX advantagee in my day, and I'm 55. I was one of the first women in the United States to play on a boys' basketball team in the 70s. And we have had to expand those fields to allow girls to play. It's been suggested several times that we just wipe out our fields and put parking lots back in. I want people to understand Lakewood High School is an absolute top-notch school. For any neighbor that feels like that school is devaluing your property, I think you need to look further into the facts, because it's one of the top schools in the state and in the nation. Our IB program is internationally recognized. Our students are monumentally kind and good people, and of course, yes, with the student population we have some problems. But I hate to keep putting it back to the kids not ever getting represented. Honestly, I tried to get my kids to come here, but they've been hearing us talk about how these meetings go, and they do not have any desire to come here. They don't pay taxes. They are about to vote. I've got one getting ready to vote. He turns 18 next month. So they are engaging in the civil topic of this issue. But we do have Title IX. We need the fields. I agree with the gentleman who said poor planning. We got a real problem. We got a top-notch school with very little public transportation access. I think Dan Bach, who spoke Saturday, said we have 3 buses for 2,100 students. That's not going to get those students there. I was a parent driving 3 different kids to this school. There's no easy way to come in and out of this school without interrupting the entire neighborhood. There's no easy access into this school. So, yeah, the city's got a problem, the neighbors got a problem, and the school district has a problem. And the kids, They're just trying to get to school. I have to say, I am really upset to know that kids who were parking along our home, Lakewood's our home, and our property front of some of those streets, and kids that have been parking there and trying to do the right thing and go to class are ending up with $50 tickets, while the kids that are out roaming the neighborhood causing the problem are being ignored because the police are all tied up booting cars and writing tickets. So we do also need to divert how we're using our resources here. Also, the ADA, we have a lot of, now my other primary concern is what's happened on 9th Avenue, because I have athletes and we access those fields. We have no way to access those fields now. The new signage that went up took all that access away from us. We have parents and grandparents and visitors to the school that can't even come along there without the police in force, which is a horrible representation for our school and our community, and now having to be out there. And yes, there are people that have absolutely ignored the other side of the street and are parking illegally and should be ticketed and should be towed and should be doing all those things. But we've lost our sidewalk adjacent to our school property. Okay, so I don't know that that is completely fair. The city, with poor planning, you've got 3 churches, a school, sports fields, Kipling. It's all happening on 9th Avenue. Who allowed all this to go on? I don't know. But the school would like to work with the community. I hope the community would like to work with the school. We've got great kids. And anybody that thinks that their property values have gone down has not opened that new assessment. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Larkin. I have Gail Hayden and then Jeff. Welcome.
Hello. I live at 6th and Garrison, and I've been there for 20 years. And I have seen on Garrison, obviously the traffic has increased, and my personal getting in and out of my property isn't easy. So we've got people that are great about letting us in and out, and we've got people who aren't. So you're going to have those kind of people around the community, around the school, and you're going to have those kind of people that are going to be friendly and not. Do I like what's happening on Garrison and in the community? No, but I chose to buy a home on Garrison. I chose to buy a home near Lakewood, and I choose to continue to live there. So what's happening now? By restricting what I see, everything on 9th Avenue and the restrictions around the high school. Here's what I'm seeing and I'm experiencing myself. Right across from me is the Garrison Park, the complex. Kids are now parking at the complex. Kids are now coming to my house asking if they could access through my yard to get to school. Am I going to let them? Absolutely, because I don't want them walking on Garrison. So if you think by restricting things around the high school that this is going to eliminate the problem, this is going to make everybody happy, it's not. Everybody should be concerned. East of Garrison, those are the families now and the households that are also going to be affected because the parking is going to be moving out. So you've got all these people, you've got all these restrictions, and now you're going to have this bigger problem, and it's not just right around Lakewood, it's going to be moving east as well. So I'm here to say that as a homeowner near the high school, on Garrison, I want to be part of the solution. I want to help make this a better visibility, accessibility in and out. And so we're here to support whatever you can do to make that happen.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. Jeff, did you want to just second that? There we go. Well said. So that exhausts the folks that want to sign up before. We have public comment after as well. Is there anybody that still wish to go before or come on down? That's okay. Come on down. Are you on one of the sheets?
I think I signed up. It said sheet 1 on the bottom. My name's Kim Wilson.
Yep, there you are. I got you.
And I am a parent of a current student at Lakewood and one that has recently graduated, not this year, but last year. And I have witnessed a lot of problems around the school over the years with traffic and such, and I think that neighborhoods around schools, parks, community centers, popular restaurants, the neighborhood gathering, family gathering house, wherever, you're going to have parking issues all throughout the city. I think part of this is due to the huge growth that our state is seeing. And so I think there's several variables to consider when we look at parking. And I implore you to carefully consider how any actions you make for parking will translate to other areas of the city, and also the consequences to the immediate community of that area. In particular, the restrictions along 9th, I wasn't aware until the school sent out a letter with Lakewood's header on it, and a couple of days later those signs went up along 9th that said no stopping, no standing, no parking. And the consequence of those signs are that grandparents or people that are not obviously able to move across the uneven terrain of the soccer field, and it is a soccer field there, it's not fields available for parking lots, they can't get access to the baseball field there. I know for a fact, my son played baseball, and the school district spent a lot of money making those fields accessible, for handicap accessible. They put a sidewalk over to 9th Street, and it's a short walk from the street over there, but those signs do not even allow me to stop and drop off my 83-year-old mother-in-law to watch her grandson's baseball game. So I don't think it was well thought through that they didn't consider the consequences to the overall community when they put those signs up. The other thing I've noticed over the years, I think there is a real need for enforcement. Somebody said that earlier. I see a lot of abhorrent behavior, driving, parking in the neighborhoods when it's time to pick up kids in the afternoon. And I've always tried to be considerate and aware that that people live there, and I see people turning around in other people's driveways, people making U-turns, people blocking driveways, and the behavior is just not acceptable. But we do have laws or ordinances that already address those issues, so we do need more enforcement. And I did not see a lot of enforcement until people show up at council meetings and then they come out for a while, but I think it needs to be more often. And the other thing to consider, one of the variables that I mentioned earlier, we talk about enrollment at Lakewood. And I just quickly looked at the enrollment at the high school over the last 20 or 30 years and the population growth in Lakewood over the last many years. I pulled that information off of Dora's website, but no, the Department of Local Affairs through the state. But sorry, wrong acronym. But anyway, I don't think the enrollment at Lakewood is out of line with the population growth in the city itself, or the state for that matter. And there's not a button that we can push to dial back the populations to 1980. I would love to be able to drive up and down Kipling or I-25 or anywhere with the traffic that we had 30 years ago, but we can't. And but the other thing to consider with regard to the high school is that the laws have changed. Kids can't carpool anymore. They're not allowed to have other kids in their cars. And it's more of a commuter society that we live in than it was 50 years ago. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right, anybody else? Yes. Okay.
Sorry, I missed your call.
Oh, okay.
Ralph Johnson.
Yes, Mr. Johnson.
Mayor,
Great,
Council
thank you.
members, Ramey Johnson, Charlie Abel from Ward 1, of course. Ralph Johnson again. Independence right next to Lakewood High School. I want to say that, thinking that since we're in the summertime, this is a great time for the city and the school district to get together in a time when the tempers are less stressed, you might say, and discuss what can be done. Because, as we've heard, we cannot have the students rumble through the neighborhood as we feel they've been doing, and acting imperiously as we have been. The second thing I want to say is that as a taxpayer, this will get back to school. I cannot support any school bond measure or tax mill increase, et cetera, because I want more transparency from the school district. There's very little, and my monies, I feel, are going to waste by spending on expensive graduation ceremonies. We heard, because of the snowstorm, graduation ceremonies at Red Rocks are canceled. That costs money. One year, Lakewood High School's ceremony was at the Air Museum at Lowry. Excuse me. And I feel that if they have not learned by this time to take the road less trod and have learned about diversity, even though it, as long as it doesn't conflict with their current views, biased views, they're not going to learn them in a fancy, very expensive graduation ceremony. And I think some of them are probably will be getting their certificates of release in 5, 10, or 15 years from Canyon City. Some of them, I think, will be there. And so I cannot support such bond measures and taxes until the school district changes its tune. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And, ma'am? Mr. Olson, you signed up to go after? Is
well,
that right?
Can I get a ruling here? There's 8 of us, so that would be 24 minutes. I'm not sure that we signed up for after, but maybe we'd be better before. But what we'd like to do, instead of taking 24 minutes, take half that time, and there's a PowerPoint, very visual, about the parking problems in our neighborhood. So we'd like to do the 12-minute PowerPoint rather than 8 of us doing 3-minute presentations. But it's up to you as to
sure.
whether you want to take 12 minutes or 24 minutes. And if we can do the 12 minutes, we'll do it. We'd request that we do it before or do it now. Otherwise, we'll wait and do the 24 minutes afterwards.
Can you do it in 10?
Sure. How about 8?
8 minutes would be great. And while you're getting ready, I'll have this young lady come down, please. Hi. Did you sign up?
I didn't get to. I was
Okay.
a few minutes late, and she was taking the sheets.
Perfect. If you just want to let the clerk know on your way back, your name and address would be great.
Mayor, council, thank you for letting me speak. I am a resident of Lakewood, and I understand with all of the different people moving into the area, it's caused lots of different kinds of parking problems. So one of the comments or feedback that I'd like to make is that it's not a one shoe fits all for all the parking situations, that, you know, we have to consider something for that scenario. So I know that there's some proposals out there that are saying, you know, they'd like one solution to everything, but I don't believe that there's one solution. And I would like to obviously be part of the solution if that's possible. The other thing is I am a neighbor of Lakewood High School. And there's been changes to the school. When they redesigned their footprint for that school, it changed the way parking happened and transportation in and out from that school, and I'm sure you're all aware about that. It was redesigned and pushed into the neighborhood. And there have been other people that have talked about that. And the parking, we've got restricted parking, and we're all aware of that. And I want to say that I live on 9th Avenue, and I appreciate everything that's happened along that way. And I know that there was a current change this last couple of weeks, which I believe made it safer on 9th Avenue. We get traffic from the school, we get traffic from Kipling to Garrison because we're a cut-through street, so we get a lot of traffic during rush hour in the morning and afternoon, in addition to the students. The parking with the students, I think, is improved, but it's in my area, so it's pushed it out, so now other neighbors have other problems. With the restriction on 9th Avenue, it's changed for the weekends. We had lots of people ignoring the no parking or the restricted parking. We had people parking in the intersection. You couldn't see the stop signs. People not familiar with that neighborhood would come through, and I seen them whiz right through that intersection because there was always so much parking in there that they didn't see the signs. So I really think that's a safety issue. Now, as far as the school district working with us as neighbors, I think they have a responsibility to be part of the solution. They have a school that's designed for 1,545 students. Today, there are 2,100 students in that school. Let's do some math here. That's almost approximately 1,000 cars within 3 or 4 streets every morning and every afternoon. I personally have had to knock on windows to ask people to move out of my driveway so I can get out. I've been courteous. I think that's part of my living around the school, and I'm okay with that morning and afternoon thing. The school doesn't let that drop off and pick up happen on their property anymore in certain areas because it causes too much congestion on their property. I believe that the neighborhood needs to work with the school district, and I would like to see the school district work with us.
Great. Thank you very much. All right, Mr. Olson. Okay. And we have quite... That's all right. We can keep going and make sure folks that want to speak before will have that opportunity, if that's cool. What was your name? All right, Mr. Coughlin, I see you. Mr. Olson, did all your folks sign up to speak?
Yes, the first 8 on that sheet are
Okay.
us.
So, welcome. And so I'll put
Raise your hand.
check marks by your names. All right, perfect. So that's Pam and David and Liz and Shirley and Bill and Dick. Did I forget somebody? Regina, all right. Well, beautiful. And then, ironically, George, you are next on the list, so it all worked out. Mr. Olson, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I'm Charles Olson, 5852 West Pacific Circle. That's in a development called Lakewood Estates. And I want to start by saying this has nothing to do with any schools. What I'm going to cover is a little orientation about what the neighborhood looks like, some of the history of the neighborhood, some of the zoning in the neighborhood, the problems, and I think we even have some solutions. Whoops.
That one can be kind of tricky. You want to?
Well, there should be.
She's got the magic touch.
This one isn't working.
Okay. Okay, this is a conflict between a very high density condo apartment project called Sun Point and an R16 residential area around it, and the parking problems that overflow from the high density into residential. Okay, they have private streets, and so they have a parking firm, a parking company that they don't allow parking on their streets, and they have a towing company that comes through and tows if you're park there improperly. And they do put stickers on the windows of the cars and they tow them. Okay, this is a picture, a drawing of, on the right, the smaller buildings are Sunpoint 1 and Sunpoint 2. On the left, you can see the larger lots are Lakewood Estates Filing 1 or the single family. The high density has 498 units. And if you look at this road that goes around here, I'll refer that as the ring road. Out in here are the residential units. You can see that one of these 12-unit apartment buildings is about the same size as one lot in our neighborhood. We're all at least 6,000 square feet. Most of us are 9 or 10,000 square feet or quarter-acre properties. Okay, a few comments about that same map. It's composed of Sunpoint 1 and Sunpoint 2, which are condos in one case and smaller one-unit condos and apartments in another case. They have a lot of parking available for visitor parking. They have at least 110 spaces. I've counted them. That they have very restricted parking, which drives their parking out into the neighborhood. So if we can do something to allow parking on those 110 spaces, it will solve the problem. There's about 40 people that are driven out into our neighborhood. So it isn't a problem, not enough parking, it's a problem of their HOA not allowing parking.
Okay. Sorry, Mr. Is that Sunpoint 1 or 2? I'm sorry.
Well, I'm talking Sunpoint 1 and 2. They're, let's call it Sunpoint. Sunpoint is made up of larger condos, Sunpoint 2. Sunpoint 1 is smaller 3-story buildings.
With 2 management companies, right? Separate.
2 management companies.
Thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah. Okay, so our unit is zoned R16, 168 homes. They're zoned MRS, 498 condos and apartments. I looked up the definition of zoning, and any continuous area that differs in some respect or is distinguished from some purpose from adjoining areas of which certain distinctive circumstances exist. And surely we have distinctive circumstances different than what they have, and we don't think that they should overflow into our zoning area. Okay, there, a little history. Lakewood Estates was being built in around 1984. The single-family area began about 1984, and the first part of Sunpoint was built between 84 and 88. Then Sunpoint stopped being developed, and the second half was not built until 1994. Now, of the 8 people here tonight, all of us bought our homes before there was a problem. There was a field there, and then in 1984, I bought in 1990. 1994 is when they filled in the field with the second half of the development. It's high density, the 3-story. This is Sunpoint 1, second highest density in the city of Lakewood. They have either assigned parking spaces or in some cases garages. The garages are very small because the garages were built over the top of parking spaces. So a lot of them aren't big enough even to handle a pickup truck. Okay, this is a picture of their street, the Ring Road. You can see there's no parking. There's no cars. They have beautiful streets because their cars are over in our neighborhood. Winter and summer, this is just not. We have this 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We don't get a summer break like schools do. No cars again. Another street, no cars. no cars in their visitor spots. 110 spaces. Now let's look at the neighborhood that I live in. These are the cars in front of my house. Here we're looking south on Iliff, the cars and trucks parked there. As I said, this is a 24/7 summer, winter, middle of the night, Saturday mornings, Sunday mornings. Another picture of West Pacific Circle looking west. Iliff Drive looking south. Iliff Drive looking north. The city does have a municipal code about 24-hour parking. It's Municipal Code 103380, and it says that you cannot park a vehicle on a right-of-way for more than 24 hours. The problem is if you read the last sentence, it says the Lakewood Police Department may require towing, and I'm not sure that the city of Lakewood has ever towed a car, but there is an ordinance covering parking for more than 24 hours. Not only do they park there, but there's a lot of just storage where they park and leave it for weeks, or even I've got one. This guy was parked there for 12 years. He finally moved. But there's another truck, Nelson Concrete or something, that's replaced him. They park in front of mailboxes. It's a federal offense to park in front of a mailbox, but fortunately our mailman usually doesn't give tickets, and we do get our mail. We have commercial trucks parked there. Since there's no room really in their own area for larger vehicles. This is a problem the city needs to deal with too. This street there's not been street sweeping on this street since 1984. Over 25 years that they have not been able to sweep the street. At least Denver puts up signs when they want to do street sweeping. This car is parked there right now next to my home with garbage in the back. We get noise. My bedroom is 20 feet from the street. The other morning, when they had ice on the windshields, I had 5 cars, people out there waking me up at 6 in the morning scraping. Diesel, the diesels start up. When people lock their cars at night, it beep, their little beep, beep, beep to make sure their cars are locked. We have parking in front of our driveways. Of course, here we can call the police and get rid of it. We have parking in front of the fire hydrants. We can call the police. We have parking real close together. Here's one. They're parked at some point during the day, and then in the evening, around 8 or 9 o'clock, they move over and park in front of my house and the fire hydrant. Same with this guy. He parks in Sunpoint during the day. In the evening, he moves over into the single-family neighborhood. We have questioned whether we're losing property value. It's hard to show a house where, first of all, the realtor may not be able to find a place to park to show the home, but it could be devaluating our properties, although my property did go up. We've tried signs in various homes, trying to make people be aware that they're interrupting our life. Family and friends can't park. The neighbor across the street, the grandparent comes to take care of the kids, no place to park. On the right is some of their parking. The property manager over there estimates that 40% of these garages are used for storage. You can see a picture of one of them on the left. It's not a garage, it's a storage unit. Again, pictures of what the parking that is available to them that can't be used. We think our parking problem is worse than even Lakewood High School, although we think we do have a solution. The police have talked to the Sunpoint managers. I think Pete probably has talked to them. The homeowners say, why should we have parking on our streets where now we have beautiful streets, nobody's parked there, the kids can play in their streets, we'll drive all the cars into the next neighborhood. What can be done? In February, you had this proposal done, 35 pages, for solutions to some of the parking problems. And I think any of them would work. These people are renters or purchasers of these properties, so they're not going to walk 3 blocks carrying their groceries. If they can't park reasonably close to their homes, they're going to move their apartment, sell their home, and new people are not going to buy it. So if we had some restricted parking in our neighborhood, there are people are already complaining that live there that they would love to be able to rent a parking space in their own development that's been proposed about $30 a month. This is an old slide. I made this up for another program, and I noticed that well, maybe I'm on okay. I guess I took his name. Oh, okay, Jay Hutchinson, which is going to be speaking following me. I've got a quote from an old slide that said, on April 22nd, 2013 presentation that he made, most cities have had some control and restrictions on their parking. Lakewood has been studying this now for 5 years or more. Residential parking permit, RPPs, was proposed. I went to the city to get the form to fill out to get residential permit parking, and they said the city council had never adopted that. So there are solutions for restricting parking in a lot of the studies you've done, and I hope that you will pick one of those that would be appropriate for our area.
Thank you, sir. Well done. George, come on down.
My name's George Coughlin. I'll represent my mom, who's a Lakewood resident, since I'm her power of attorney. But I also work diligently on the baseball field, and so for 10 years, we've been working on that field. When I first started working on it, the sheds were tagged. There was trash all along the streets, all of that. We've spent tens of thousands of dollars improving that facility, much of which was done for the neighbors, planting bushes, planting trees, planting planters, doing all these things so that it was a nicer environment for all the neighbors that lived on 9th Avenue. And I will say that without a doubt that most, if not all, of the parents that live at, that were with the baseball program support the restrictions in the general neighborhood. What we don't support and why we get upset is what's happened on 9th Avenue and adjacent to the baseball field. The last game my father saw before his son, the last game my dad saw of his son playing was at Lakewood High School. He was a Marine Corps veteran. He had Parkinson's and could barely get to the game. Okay? We've made it so it's not ADA compliant. So that's one problem. It's not, I believe in the faith, and it's been a difficult situation for churchgoers on Sunday. We know that's a problem. And the church has been always generous and always kind to the baseball program, without a doubt, over the years. But we want to be good neighbors with the neighbors. And I support situations like if someone's being abusive to a neighbor, identify the kid. Don't blame the whole program. If there's a specific child or driver or whatever, take a license number and let's report it. We'll try to help do our part to police the neighborhood too. But I also wanted to just kind of talk about Lakewood in general. It's a growing community. It's 1.4 to 1.7% growth. We already had a parent detail how the school's population is in line with the growth. And when we vote down things like 3A and 3B, and we talk about miscreant kids in Canyon City and things like that, we lose the point. I would bet, I'd fair to say that for every one kid that ends up in Canyon City, 20 of them will be taxpayers paying people's retirement, being able-bodied citizens, making us safe. 35 kids from my son's graduation class, including my son, went to serve. So, and he was a baseball player. So that's kind of one of my things. I just wanted to say about generational equity. We pay things forward. We work with the young people, we work with the old people, and we do things so that we leave a legacy. And I think that school does that. And if we're falling short as a baseball program, I'd like to address that. I know that in my personal deeds at that school and with that program, I've done so. And I'll continue to do so. My kids have been out of the school for 2 years. And then we just put the planters in over on 9th Avenue. We just did that. And I'm going to continue to do that. I envision a forest down 9th Avenue. That's what I see. Now, Charlie put a proposal forward, and we're talking about mediation. And I'm kind of going, why do we need to mediate something that's simple? There does need to be residential parking for a couple spots on 9th Avenue, since it's not allowed at all on the north side. So I believe in 2 residential spots. I do believe in 2 handicap spots, and I do believe in a loading zone. But the rest of the street needs to be opened up. It's just a matter of fairness. I've went by Green Mountain. They have parking on the neighborhood side of the school side of the property. I went by RV. Same thing. I've sent the pictures to Charlie. RV, A West, Green Mountain, on their side, where the neighborhood school side of the property exists, they control the property. Same thing with CCU. On their side of the street, on their borders, they control the property. And I believe firmly that the neighbors have every right to control what goes on in front of their houses. And if people are doing something wrong in front of their houses, they should be ticketed. But what is in front of the school's property is the school's access. And accommodations for ADA and some residents should be made. But why do you have to go to mediation on something that is as simple as just allowing 5 spots and opening the street? It doesn't make any sense to me. It's encumbering. And last of all, I just want to say that, you know, it's a great city and a great community, and it's a great environment. And I think the school and what you do and those facilities have been built to be used. I think one of the last things that happened to me just Sunday, because I go by the field after church all the time to check on it. I saw a family taking something from the Baptist church, throwing it over the fence to play on the field. And all kinds of members of the neighborhood, they use those fields too. I see them walking the track, walking their dogs, and doing those things. So it is a partnership, but the neighbors do use the facilities of the school as well.
Great. Thank you. Pamela Peterson. I'm just going to go through. Good evening. Welcome.
I'm here for Lakewood High School and for the baseball program, and mainly parking on 9th Avenue. My parents love to go to the games. They're elderly. They're in their late 80s and 90, and there's no parking for handicap. It's very difficult to park at the school and walk across on the grass. It's, they have falling issues. The grass is going to be ruined for the soccer fields, for all the parents who have to park there and players and what have you. And I can understand no parking again on the north side, but on the school side, I don't see why we can't have it reopened. Thank you.
Thank you. Greg? Mr. Larson? Do we have a Mr. Larson? Greg Larson? No? Okay. Marty? Good evening.
So, like many of the comments you've heard here tonight, I'm here as a Lakewood native, an LHS grad, 2 former students at Lakewood, 1 current, community neighbor, a volunteer. I'm here with many others from our Lakewood family here tonight because we see a handful of unreasonable demands getting unreasonable results around the high school. These parking restrictions around the streets surrounding the school just don't seem to make sense, as you've heard this evening. And the situation becomes more and more absurd in the eyes of many of us as these short-term solutions get implemented. Our options are being taken away, not only to park, but literally to stop and drop our kids off at school. We're not dropping them off to go make trouble. We're dropping them off at one of the best high schools in the country. So we're here to ask you if you're willing to listen, if you're willing to be leaders, if you're willing to step forward. And we've heard you've been working on things for 5 years. Sunpoint, 5 years. This issue, 5 years. Brian, Randy, they've been complaining. They're getting results. They're getting no parking signs put up. They're getting their neighborhood back according to them. But their neighborhood is our neighborhood too. And Brian and Randy, their names will just be different. It'll be Joe and Bob across the street. As Gail Hayden pointed out earlier, they're pushing them farther and farther out. These aren't real solutions. These are temporary Band-Aids to a problem and appeasing a handful of unreasonable requests. So the incessant complaints from a handful of people have resulted in actions by our city. And don't misunderstand. I understand the district and the school and so many others have a part in this as well. But you're restricting and ultimately impairing the rights of the students and families and guests of Lakewood High School to use a public asset the way it was intended to be used. And for every one of the handful of people that are being affected negatively, complaining, there are thousands of others on the other side of that fence, trust me. So these aren't private streets. These aren't private driveways, but some of these decisions that have been made are making them that way. Not to mention the ADA violations that have already been touched upon. So, as we said, where are these kids going to go? They're going to go across Garrison. They're going to go across Kipling. We need to find real solutions. We've had kids hit this year on Garrison, on Kipling. Again, we understand we're pushing them into other neighborhoods, and that's not fair either to those neighbors, so we need real solutions. As a school, as a community, we've cooperated, we've given back over the years, and I understand there's more we can do. I understand there's problems in working with the school district, but that's what you do. You're leaders. You ran for office, and you wanted to be leaders of our city. And so 5 years later, for many of the people in this room, we're asking all of you to please be leaders. Go find solutions. Go find reasonable solutions. And at the end of the day, if we're not all that happy, and Brian and Randy aren't all that happy, and the others, then maybe we've got where we need to be. We're willing to sit down with you. Our incoming principal is in the audience tonight as well, and hopefully we'll speak later. We've got leadership. We've got people at the school that want to help. We've got community people, as you've heard from tonight. So while we appreciate the hours that you've all put into this issue, we wonder where are the results and when are we going to get there? So these issues have been going on too long. It's time, as I said, for leaders to be leaders. Don't misconstrue that statement as a threat in any way. It's a simple expectation. That's what we expect from you all. So please help us get there. We'll help you get there. We're here tonight asking that of you. Your current approach does not fit with that criteria and is not a long-term solution. Thank you.
Thanks, Marty. So I have one more signed up as Jane. I can't read the last name of West 27th. All right. Welcome, and then we'll go ahead and start the presentation with Mr. Hutchison next.
I don't know that I can say it too much better than Marty just did as far as leadership, but I think it's important that all of you, we have selected you to represent us and not one person. We elected you to represent all of us, and I'm from Ward 1. I'm also a Lakewood High School graduate. My sister's here is a Lakewood High School graduate, and my son played baseball on that field. So as a person who has taken part in seeing that school go to a major complex that is high in its education, high in its athletic, high in all of the values that we aspire to have our future residents, and I don't think they're going to end up in Canyon City. I think they're going to be respectable citizens that are going to be ready to lead our society forward. We're misjudging, I think, our young professional or young students that are coming forward and what they're going to be able to do in the generations ahead. When we don't invest in them, then we have not invested in our future, and we have not taken what we have done from the past to get to where we are today. It is time that you all take action. So that's why I'm with Marty. Take some action for the good of the whole, not the few. And that doesn't mean you're going to make everybody happy. You're not going to make everybody happy. But when you take for the good of the whole versus the good of a few, then in the long run, things can go better for everybody. And we are a community. Lakewood High School is an asset. Schools, churches, libraries, all of those properties are assets to why we live here in Lakewood. So please take more pride in our community and take some action that will be good for all of us so that we can all be better and move this young generation forward in a way that is going to be positive for the long term.
Thank you very much. Mr. Hutchison, while you're getting ready, Mr. Abel, did you have a question or?
I just wanted to make a disclaimer. I was given credit for an idea that came from elsewhere. Newt Vaughn and Bernie Bartels had suggested that the Jeffco Stadium be used as a drop-off or parking spot, and I certainly don't want to claim their thunder. So the idea came from them.
Thank you for the disclaimer. Mr. Hutchison, how are you tonight?
I am fine and thrilled by the comments that you've already heard. I almost could skip my entire presentation. Frankly, almost everything that's in it's been touched on. And I am grateful to all those who've talked and will continue to on this topic. The ACIC obviously has had a role. The neighbors have had a role. The school district has had a role. The school students and parents have had a role. The athletic folks who utilize fields and others who utilize the fields for non-school or not as directly related to the school activities. I think all of those parties have been represented on the school issues. And then you've heard also on the questions about multifamily parking that spills over into adjacent neighborhoods. So as I was sitting back there, and the longer this went on, the more I wondered whether I should make my presentation. But I will. And I won't have to use nearly as many words, I suspect. And so forgive me if I don't represent in detail everybody's comments and thoughts. I'm going to try to blend this with what you've already heard so that collectively maybe it's as clear a picture as I can paint. I'm going to focus on some specific things. All, again, have been touched on. Some are related to schools, some specifically to high schools. Lakewood High School was most frequently mentioned, but some of these topics could apply to other high schools. And that includes parking off-site from the schools, evening and weekend site use, and then drop-off and pickup, which is a little less of a parking issue, which tonight was billed as a parking issue, but there are some parking-related items associated with pickup and drop-off at schools. And that certainly extends beyond high schools. That's all kinds of schools. And then, of course, the multifamily spill over into adjacent neighborhoods, as you heard about in the example with Lakewood Estates. The staff request is to ask for some direction for the entire City Council, some kind of a consensus on what kind of process might be appropriate from here going forward. You've also heard a little bit about some of the things that have been done in the past. I'll touch a little bit more on some of those as well without going into great detail. The one item that I will not talk about tonight that you did hear some about tonight and will come up at a later discussion, and that is the requirement for new development. How much parking should be required by new developments, particularly multifamily developments? I think that's where the predominant interest is, but other kinds of things that might need parking spaces as well. And the reason I won't talk about that is that's already planned for part of a discussion about zoning ordinances changes that you periodically hear about. So I won't focus on new development. This will be existing problems with existing development. Much of the student off-site parking is related to high schools, but it's not all high schools. I was interested to learn that there are some 13 different physical locations throughout Lakewood where the Jefferson County School District educates high school students. There are 4 major high schools, but there are 13 different locations, and I will touch on the 4 major high schools without going into detail. And there are some private schools. Colorado Christian, Denver Christian schools both have high school related traffic and students as well. So the topic of schools is much broader than the parking issues that we've heard about. So, and I don't want to paint all the schools with the same brush. There are a number of aspects related to this, and you've heard some of these. When you have a high school quality school, people want to have their kids there. You end up with more students, you end up with more cars. When you have choice enrollment, which is required, I believe, by the state, the district's obligated to provide some choice enrollment. That could result in more students, particularly at the more attractive, more successful high schools. They could come from farther away also, which may make transportation a little bit more complex and may result in more vehicles than otherwise might be necessary. We have some long existing sites in Lakewood, and I'll talk a little bit more about that here in a minute. Lakewood High School happens to be the oldest of the 4 major high schools in the city. We have some challenging jurisdictional components to this discussion. You've heard a little bit about that as well. The state of Colorado has some regulatory authority in these kinds of issues. The school district obviously controls site development, site design, parking availability, parking fees, those kinds of things. But the city manages the on-street parking. So we have different entities that have to be a part of the solution as well. You also heard that young drivers are restricted. This hasn't always been the case. It's a relatively, well, I won't try to guess when it was. I don't remember. But it's a state law that requires that students, when they first get their license, have no passengers, then they can have 1 and then 2. And the result, of course, is a little less opportunity for carpooling. And then we have the annual challenge of more student drivers in the spring. The kids that come in the fall may not have driver's licenses yet. More will have driver's licenses in the spring, and potentially that translates to more vehicles as well. None of those are inherently bad things, but they're part of the situation that we're looking at. The school district does take some actions, obviously. One is that even though the state law doesn't require them to follow our site development criteria, they always look at those. And I've talked with them about that, and they don't merely ignore those things. They realize that we've given it some thought as well. They do have a parking fee, and I think that exists at all the high schools. I'm not sure. I know it exists at Lakewood High School. But they also try to optimize the use of the parking lot by providing more parking permits than there are parking spaces, because the kids aren't there all day long every day from opening a school to close a school. So by allowing more kids to have parking permits, they can optimize the use of the school parking lot. There's a bus fee. On the other side, the school district's not required to provide public transportation. Jefferson County School District does. I'll talk a little bit more about how effective that is here in a minute. Then we have the public streets that the city has responsibility for, and I'm going to show a few pictures here. This is the north side of Lakewood High School. This is looking generally to the east. The fields are behind the chain link fences on the other side of the cars, and it is the frontage of the Lakewood High School School District property where the parking is occurring there. This is a street in the neighborhood that is not the only type of street, but it's typical of many of the streets in the neighborhood. This happens to be 9th Avenue, but there are other streets that I'll show you on a map in a minute that are very similar to this, where they're a little bit wider than some streets. They have sidewalks on both sides, and we took this picture because there was a vehicle parked on both sides, and 2 vehicles can travel through this area, even with the parked cars. This street also is within a couple of blocks of Lakewood High School. There is no sidewalk for anybody to use. It's a narrower pavement than the one you saw in the preceding picture. It's difficult to see because of the shadows here, but the vehicles on the sides are all parked legally. They're all parked 100% on the asphalt. They're on the pavement, so they're not destroying people's front yards or other property. But it does get tight. The trash truck made it through, but it was tight. Now, the other important or relevant, I think, point here when you begin to look at solutions is that this is not an unusual street in Lakewood. Particularly from Mississippi north, there are streets all over town that are like this. They're narrower, they don't have sidewalks, and they work generally pretty well as long as they aren't lined on both sides continuously with cars, because people will pull out of the way and let somebody by. People generally are pretty accommodating of each other. So some of the considerations related to public streets that I just wanted to mention is that, as you've heard tonight, there are some places where it's illegal to park, and enforcement does occur. It's not instantaneous, but it does occur. There are local streets that are wider with sidewalks, narrower without sidewalks. And then there are collector and arterial streets. You heard a little bit about Garrison and Kipling near Lakewood High School. They are higher speed, higher volume streets, less interest in having students or any other pedestrians, frankly, going across those streets rather than along the local streets. And one thing that may not have been mentioned yet is that property owners generally are responsible for their property up to the street. The edge of the street might be defined by a sidewalk, it might be defined by a curb, it might be defined by an edge of asphalt. So when people don't park on the pavement, they often are interfering with areas where the resident or the business owner or the church is responsible to maintain the grass or the landscaping or whatever else goes clear out to the edge of the pavement. Sometimes that kind of thing can also interfere with drainage along some of these streets, and then the city will try to help with that as well. Now I want to turn to the four largest high schools in Lakewood. And I'm going to run through a similar set of slides for each of the four, and there will be way too much data on them. But when I get to the end, I will do one slide which will kind of summarize and compare the four. So hopefully you won't feel obligated to try to remember all the details of each of the four. So just as general background information, I'm going to do these in chronological order. Lakewood High School opened almost 60 years ago. It's on a 28-acre site. Generally, in today's world, the school district would like to have about 40 acres for a high school. So we are constrained by, in the most broadest collective sense that I can express it, are constrained by an existing condition. There's about 2,000 students there today. And just doing the math with the number of parking spaces that are on site, that equates to about 3.6 students per on-site parking space. You'll see the comparison as we go forward. Not many students use buses at Lakewood High School. They're not obligated to. The school district's not obligated to provide them, but the school district does have a program that allows for busing. And here's 20 years of the census, the student census at Lakewood High School. The specific numbers are not particularly important. It has experienced some growth. That would be expected from a school that's got the reputation it does. And it's pretty well leveled off at around 2,000 students over the last 5, 6, 7 years. This is an aerial photo of that area. On the right, the street that is identified as Garrison. The one on the left is Kipling. And then 6th Avenue at the bottom of the slide, and to the north is 9th Avenue. 9th Avenue, of course, is part of the school frontage and is next to the athletic fields. And you can see that this is a high school embedded in a neighborhood, as you've already heard, more so than the others that you'll see as we go forward. But to the west, it's mostly commercial. To the south, it's a split. To the east and the north, it's residential with the churches as well to the north. This slide's a little difficult to read, and my intent is not that you read all the details, but these are areas where there are existing parking restrictions. The yellow doesn't show up particularly well, especially if you're in the back of this room, but north of 8th Avenue on Holland, Hoyt and Garland, there are restrictions, as well as 9th Avenue from Garland West, and then somewhat south of 8th on Holland. The point here is that there have been a variety of things done over a fair amount of time. This indicates the earliest change in 1999. Those changes actually occurred from 1999 back, so it could include things before 1999. And they're customized. We've used different kinds of tools to try to balance a lot of needs, and you've heard all of those needs described by others tonight as well. Don't even try to read the signs, but there are a lot of signs out there, and the only point of this slide is that they are customized solutions trying to balance things fairly well. The high school has also taken some efforts. These are some items that have been identified by the high school as some of their efforts to deal with the situation. And a lot of it has to do with education. They've sent letters both to the field users and also to their parents about drop-off and parking and using the lot when it's available and being appropriate during drop-off and pickup. They've also rerouted food deliveries. That's a fairly recent change. And as I mentioned earlier, they sell more parking permits than there are spaces in order to optimize the utilization of that parking lot. So let's go to Alameda High School. It was opened in 1961, also a smaller site, 26 acres. Smaller student population, and I've put 9th through 12th grades on here because a couple of years ago, Alameda High School was expanded to include 7th and 8th. So most of what you'll see here is an apples-to-apples comparison of 9th through 12th. You'll see an exception here in a minute. 3.2 students per parking space, and you'll see that in the comparison. Here's the exception. We didn't break down how many students from which group of classes ride buses, but a few more from Alameda High School than Lakewood High School. And here's the census over the last 20 years. So it's somewhat less than its peak in the last 20 years. This is the Alameda site. On the east is Wadsworth, so obviously no parking is possible there. The other three edges, though, are streets that have the potential for parking, bus drop-off, and those sorts of things. Parking lot's in the lower left corner. It's right adjacent to the backstop of the major baseball field, not far from the softball field. But there's not on-street parking on Wadsworth next to the football field, so that has to happen someplace else. Here are the restriction locations around Lakewood High School. While there is allowed parking on the Louisiana frontage of the high school, rarely does that happen. That's a bit far from the school, and the kids can park on the north side of Arizona next to what is a storage facility, a rental storage facility, and doesn't interfere with homeowners or churches or the other kinds of uses you've heard today. And so they tend to park closer to the school. The third, 1972 opening was Green Mountain High School. It's on 39 acres, so it's close to the 40-acre target. 5 of those acres, though, are to the north. And if you picture, actually the picture that I'll show you in a minute won't show this, but to the north part of the Green Mountain property, there's a large slope down from the athletic fields. That's owned by the district, and then some more level area that's also owned by the district. Those aren't used for formalized school activities now. About 1,100 students. That's about 2 students per parking space, the on-site parking spaces. And a few bus users, not many. The Green Mountain student census has changed a bit in the last decade. 1,500 roughly was the pretty stable number. Now it's a little over 1,000, 1,100. This doesn't show the whole campus. As you can see on the upper part of the slide, you can see the baseball field. The football field's a little beyond that. On the left of the baseball field, and then below that and beyond is the 5 acres or so that's essentially vacant today. These are the parking restrictions. I'm going to take just a couple of minutes on this one. Green Mountain Drive doesn't have any parking allowed along it because of the nature of the street. Louisiana Avenue does have parking allowed on the school frontage, not on the homeowner frontage. And then I want to draw your attention just for a moment down to Arkansas Place, which is in the lower middle part of the slide. And you'll see with one house exception, there are restrictions all the way around Arkansas Place. And as you've heard tonight, there are lots of different perspectives on lots of different things. And this different perspective was that this homeowner came to us and said, no, take these restrictions away. I want the kids to be able to park in front of my house. So a little bit of everything. And finally, Bear Creek High School. It was fully replaced in 2009. There was a school there before that, of course. It's on 41 acres, so about the size that is desirable. About 1,600 students. That's about 2.2 per parking space. A few more students use buses. And the census has been relatively stable over the last couple decades, a little bit of a drop-off in the last 4 or 5 years. From about 2,000 back in the earlier years of this period of time down to 1,600 or so. The Bear Creek campus, and this is the high school campus that I'm going to talk about. You'll notice in the upper right the Bear Creek K-8 campus as well. You'll see some pictures later about other things, but right now I'm going to focus just on the high school campus. It's bounded by Dartmouth on the north, which is a street that is a collector street and doesn't have parking allowed on the sides. It's got bike lanes. And then on the south is Girton Drive, which it barely touches. And then on the west, of course, Kipling Parkway, where there's not parking. The restrictions, though, are in the general area. We did have to do some signage to help people understand Dartmouth Place a little bit better. The interesting little tiny restrictions to the right on Hoyt Way are fairly ancient and probably unnecessary at this point. But one of the things we've also learned is that removing restrictions is an attractant for controversy, and they don't seem to be causing a problem, so we haven't tried to remove those restrictions. There are some walkways that go between homes in this neighborhood, and they cross Hoyt Way right there. And the issue that was happening, this was way back in the 90s, maybe earlier, was that the kids would get off campus, they'd get that far, and that's where they'd smoke, and it was undesirable. So that's what was done at that time. And that was long before the site was redeveloped. In this case, the parking lots are pretty close to the school and pretty close to the athletic fields. There's not residential or other streets that are closer to the athletic fields. So I suspect most of the athletic field users park in the parking lots. So now I want to go through a little table here of those 4 high schools. First, the size in acres. As I mentioned, 40 is generally a pretty good target, as I understand it, from those who know more about school design than I do. This is the number of students in 9th through 12th per on-site parking space. So these are the numbers from the earlier slides. And you can see at Lakewood, it's 3.6 students per on-site parking space, 2.2 at Bear Creek. And I should be clear that this is total number of on-site parking spaces. Some of these are used by faculty and staff. So drawing precise conclusions from these is probably a little bit risky, but there's also some value, I think, in looking at the comparisons in a general sense. In this case, I've added the street frontage. So this is the number of students per the sum of on-site parking plus the street frontage that is adjacent to the school. No street frontage adjacent to anyone else's property, just adjacent to the school district's property. So as you would guess, the numbers go down a little bit. A little bit more at Lakewood, where there's more street frontage than there is, say, at Bear Creek or at Green Mountain. Bus use, these are the numbers shifted to a percentage. So if you take the number of students that ride buses and divide by the number of students in the last school year, you can see how many take advantage of the opportunity that the district makes available. The asterisk on Alameda is because, again, that includes 7th grade through 12th. The others are 9th through 12th. Now, this one's a little bit complicated, but perhaps useful. Those 4 schools each have a boundary. Even though there is choice, school choice, every high school has a boundary, and the students within that boundary can go to that school. They can choose to go to another school if there's adequate facilities. So in this case, I've added up those 4 schools' boundaries and made one larger boundary that encompasses those 4 school boundaries. That boundary, that expanded boundary for all schools, doesn't match the city of Lakewood city limits, as you would guess, but it's close. It generally includes most of the city of Lakewood. There's other high schools that are close. Jefferson's real close. Devlin, Golden may reach into the northwest edge of Lake Mead, maybe not. So this is the number of students that come from within that boundary that is of the 4 high schools that attend each school. So 65% of the kids at Lakewood High School roughly are Lakewood families, the city of Lakewood families. And I have to be careful about my language because some of us are used to saying Lakewood and thinking high school. Some of us are used to saying Lakewood and thinking city. So this is a reasonable approximation at best of the number of city of Lakewood families that have students at each of the schools. So it varies. If you average, or if you look at the gross calculation overall, about 75% of the students at the 4 high schools come from within that enlarged boundary that is roughly the city of Lakewood boundary. So it's Lakewood families predominantly. That's the only point of my very lengthy explanation. Let me shift gears from on-site and off-site parking to the weekend and evening activities. And these are, I'm not making a clear distinction between school-related activities and other kinds of activities. Both occur on these facilities. Somebody talked about utilization of public facilities for a variety of public uses, and that's kind of what this is about. variety of sports teams practice and play there. Those are arrangements made between the school or the school district and the sports teams. The city doesn't manage the school sites in any way. There's school-affiliated weekend and evening use, of course, as well. You can think of the extracurricular activities that students are involved in. And as you've heard, too, neighborhoods or neighbors can use these facilities as well. In a sense, they serve as public parks for certain kinds of activities. Proximity to parking is important. I pointed out on a couple of the other high schools that the parking lots that are on site are closer to things like the backstops at the baseball diamonds. At Lakewood High School, they're not as close. Accessibility you've heard about tonight as well. Generally, that's probably a little better at the other three high schools and not as good as at the Lakewood High School for the use of the athletic fields. And to illustrate that, this is, again, an aerial photo of the Lakewood High School site, zoomed in a little bit so you can see things a little bit better. The parking lot is in the southwest corner, obviously. The backstop is along 9th Avenue for the baseball field. The softball field's partway between the school building and 9th. You can see the track and football field pretty easily. The primary soccer field doesn't show up real well here, but it's that area to the left of the baseball field, starting at 9th Avenue and coming south. And then there's another field west of the softball diamond that, frankly, I forgot to ask anybody what it's for, but I think it's used for soccer activities as well. It's just not the full-size field, probably used for other sports and practice as well. Let me just move on to student drop-off and pickup. This seems to be necessary. The kids have to get to school and they have to leave school. And while I say that, almost wondering why I need to say it, it's a challenge, and it's a challenge that won't go away. Perhaps we can modify it, maybe make it better. The periods of time are concentrated, and it varies pretty significantly. In some cases, as little as 15 or 20 minutes in the morning, 15 or 20 minutes in the evening. That's probably a little atypical. Usually it's longer than that. Usually it's probably closer to maybe a half hour. Of course, it builds, and then it's dense and congested, and then it fades. And the drop-off is different than the pickup, because when a child's being dropped off, once they're out of the car can go. To pick up, you have to assume you know when the child's going to be there and ready to be picked up, or wait. So it adds a little bit of a parking problem. Ultimately, the drivers choose the locations. My guess is, and my personal experience as a parent, although it's been a long time since I've taken kids to school, is that the older the kid, the farther away you're willing to drop them off. So if it's an elementary child, you're probably getting them as close as you can and as safe as you can and on the side of the street of the school if you can. If it's a high school kid and I'm late for work, or I just know it's a real hassle to get through the school parking lot, I may not go through the school parking lot. I may drop them off on Louisiana on the south side of Alameda High School and let them walk that last block, and I can get off onto another street and stay out of the congestion a little bit more. So drivers make choices, and reasonable choices. There is a lot of collaboration that happens between the school district and the city on an operational level and a day-to-day level. And this drop-off and pickup is a good example of that. It's not the only thing. You've heard a fair amount this evening about the need for the district and the city to work together, and I think we need to do that in some areas better than we have. But I want you to know that there's a lot of collaboration that happens as well. For instance, let me come back to that in just a moment. This is a problem at almost every school. It doesn't matter if it's a high school or a middle school or an elementary school or a private school or a public school or all these kids have to get delivered and picked up. And today, that's generally done by car. There are exceptions. You'll see one picture here in a minute that has 4 buses in it. There are carpools that occur. There are other ways that things are more efficient and less car intensive, but that still is the dominant method. The other thing that happens that collaboratively the schools and the city have to deal with is that every fall there are parents who are new to a particular school, and it's always disappointing to find out how congested it can be, and so there are usually new ideas and new questions that we collectively have to answer about why is it like this, can't we do that, can we do this? And so we get a lot of ideas, and we certainly evaluate all those ideas related to pickup and drop-off and parking restrictions and everything else. But it's a kind of new every year. Just like every spring, there are more drivers than there were in the fall. There's also new families every fall that raise the questions. So some of the collaboration that occurs on the pickup and drop-off points, first of all, safety is primary, and so the city puts up these flasher signs, and we work with the schools to make sure that they run at the right times, and usually have to adjust that every fall. The city also puts up pedestrian crossing signals, which makes it more safer for the kids who have to cross the street, but it also adds to congestion. Traffic signals turn red, and every time they turn red, congestion gets worse because people get backed up. In this case, it's a good red, I think, on the whole. The school district will put people out in the street sometimes with some training available from the police department and with vests and the appropriate kinds of things to try to help manage the flow. When people are coming from the left and the right to go in one driveway, it helps if somebody's managing it. It's remarkable, frankly, how cooperative school parents are in this kind of a circumstance. They tend to just take turns, which technically they're not obligated to do. Here's the school bus picture that I mentioned earlier. They do take space, and they need a place to unload all those kids. This is Belmar Elementary on Garrison. I'm looking north. So if you want to turn into the school and you're going north, you're behind this white van. And you want to turn into that driveway that you see at the left that's already full of cars. So your column of cars that wants to turn left is all stopped. Now, people who want to just drive by the school and go north, they can. They can get in that lane that's just off to the right edge of the picture, and they can just keep going. The more challenging piece is the people coming south. They want to be able to go straight through if they don't want to stop for the school, and they want to turn into the same driveway if they're coming south and want to get into Belmar Elementary. Well, they can't because it's backed up. So they try to be helpful, and as you can see in this case, they've pulled clear over to the curb while they're waiting to turn into Belmar Elementary. Those are the cars that are coming toward us in the photo. That allows the next car that wants to just drive past Belmar Elementary to go around them and partly get in the two-way left turn lane and kind of weave through and get on and not have to wait for the school traffic. Unfortunately, they've completely blocked the bike lane, which doesn't do the bicyclists any good because now the bicyclists have to pull out into more traffic and not use the facility that was created for them. And it's probably illegal to do what they do. It makes the traffic flow more efficiently, but it's probably illegal. So it's one of those additional challenges. I grabbed this picture. It happens to be near Lakewood High School where there have been issues with people using driveways for turning around, that sort of thing. And you've heard about that earlier today. That's why the orange cones are there. This is a distinction for the pickup versus the drop-off. These are cars waiting to pick kids up at the Bear Creek K-8 school on a little cul-de-sac that's fairly close to the school. So they sit there for minutes, not hours, but minutes, and then eventually pick up their kid. So a few slides to do a little bit of a summary about schools before I go on to the other topic. Generally, I think we're suffering to a large degree from the age of some facilities and some success. Suffering from success is not all bad. So let me start with the age of facilities. Lakewood High School is on a small site. It's a successful school. It's very attractive. You've heard that tonight. We have some streets around Lakewood High School that are designed to have public on-street parking. They're public streets. They are designed to be broad enough, wide enough to have parking. We also have some streets that aren't, were built at a different time and a different era with different standards, and they don't have sidewalks for the kids to walk on. They're not as wide a pavement, so things get a little tricky. So we're dealing with both the ages and the success of schools and city facilities. We also have this authority complexity where the state has a role. They decide who gets licenses, who can have another person in the car with them, who can't. They also decide that the school district decides, not the city, how many parking spaces they have to have, which is unique, by the way. Every other land use in Lakewood, the city has a regulation that can affect how many parking spaces a property owner has to have. sometimes a maximum, sometimes a minimum, sometimes both, but they're not applicable to school districts. So the authority's complicated. The busing is not an obligation, but it is one that the school district provides. There are fees related to parking in buses. And then we have a lot of different voices, good voices. And I was, frankly, quite impressed with how well articulated the circumstances were discussed tonight. Perhaps it's because school's out. I don't know. But if so, great. But I was impressed. In fact, I've identified some people that I'd like to talk to some more. So let me go on to that group of interested folks. And I don't think there's anybody on here that's new except for perhaps the last two on the list. The police department's obviously interested. They have to do the enforcement. They do enforcement. And I want to emphasize that because it's not always visible because none of us are out there all the time. And they have other duties, so they come and go. They've done a little more regular enforcement in certain areas at certain times. And that's typical management of police department kinds of things. I won't say more. I think the police chief's more capable of that. And then Public Works is interested. We've had a lot of experience in dealing with a lot of these kinds of questions. We've done some things really well, I think, in trying to manage this, and some things we probably could do better. And we have some spirited debates within Public Works about how to address some of these questions. And I could describe several where we have differences of opinion. So let me shift gears to the final topic that I'm going to touch on, and it's the one that Mr. Olson spent his presentation on, and that's the parking effects of multifamily near single family. And in that particular case, part of it's related to the fact that there are private streets in the multifamily. Part of it is related to things that we can't retroactively do, and that is require parking, more parking spaces. But proactively, as I mentioned earlier, you'll hear about and have an opportunity to talk about how many parking spaces different kind of land uses should have prospectively looking at future development. But that's not tonight. So let's see. I can probably skip that. This is the same area that Mr. Olson was speaking of. To the right is the multifamily portion of Lakewood Estates known as Sun Point. To the left is the single-family area. And there are parking restrictions along Iliff. I think he mentioned it was 1994 when parking began to be possible along Iliff. And let me illustrate why. These are just like Mr. Olson's pictures. Looking north, that's Jewel Avenue at the far end where the median island is. It used to be that yellow dividing line was right down the center of the pavement, which didn't allow enough space for parking on either side. Back in maybe it was 1994, that was pushed over toward the single-family side in order to create some parking adjacent to the multifamily area, so there was at least some parking adjacent to multifamily to reduce the need for it or reduce the frequency of it happening in the single-family area. It helped, didn't eliminate the parking in the single-family area. This is a picture looking down Pacific Circle. And while there are not as many cars here as in Mr. Olson's photograph, they're both photographs. This was actually taken midday. And in all of these photographs, I can't tell you which cars are related to which houses or multifamily or single family or school or neighbors or guests or contractors working on a home. There's always that question that needs to be worked through. But the predominant theme that you've heard is valid from our experience. This is my dream. We have worked on this for a long time. And I suspect if student populations at schools change again, we'll probably have to revisit some of the things that are decided through this process. Maybe there are other things that will happen as time passes as well. And when I say long-term solutions, one of the things that we've learned is that it's easy to oversimplify this. And one of the things I was impressed with your public comment tonight was that generally people weren't oversimplifying. They were recognizing that usually an action has some kind of a consequence and they aren't always anticipatable. I'm not even sure that's a word. But as an example, some of which have already been cited tonight, we did put more parking restrictions around Lakewood High School, and most of those restrictions are on streets that are wide enough for cars to be parked on, and they have sidewalks, and as a consequence, we have parking on streets that aren't as wide and don't have sidewalks. We also have parking now on 8th Avenue, which I didn't point out on the aerial slide, but west of Lakewood High School, there's a short piece of 8th Avenue that extends from the high school parking lot to Kipling. Now, it's blocked off at the parking lot, so you can't actually drive between the school and Kipling on 8th Avenue. And there's reasons for that I won't go into right now. That piece of 8th Avenue is now full of students every day. So they've reached Kipling. You heard it said that they've reached out towards, or maybe to, or maybe across Garrison. They've reached south of the parking restrictions into the narrower streets. So one of the consequences that we've created is pushing a problem from places closer where students and parking is probably better accommodated to places farther away where it's less able to be accommodated. And it's my opinion that we're on the verge of pushing it across Kipling, and that's a goal that I would that would be an effect that I would strongly encourage avoiding. There are other issues. You've heard about the drop-off and the accessibility issues related with the prohibition about parking on the south side of 9th in the evenings and weekends. That did create some problems. Time limits are an interesting challenge. We do have a fair amount of parking that's restricted by time of day. So 8 a.m. to 4 p.m., I don't know what the right times are, but that kind of a restriction. We don't have on signs parking restrictions for a duration, a period of time, for a number of hours. And we don't, although we could, and that's certainly not something I'm suggesting not be considered, but it does create some new things that we don't deal with today. Somebody has to identify when the clock starts, and that usually means a police officer going out and marking a vehicle, and then going back out after the period of time has elapsed and to see if the vehicle's in the same place. If the vehicle has moved, then the clock needs to start again. And the movement doesn't mean 6 blocks or go home. It means has the vehicle moved, is it in a different place? There are some variations on that, but generally it means 2 trips by the police that they aren't dealing with today. So it's a different level of regulation than what we have today. Can be done. Another one is the residential permit parking programs. There are a variety of those. Those were discussed in pretty good detail in 2013. They can certainly be considered again in a variety of different ways. There was an intriguing comment about allowing the students to rent permits. There's some other things that could probably be considered there. There are some costs associated with that kind of a program, and there's some inconvenience for those who have to get permits, and they aren't a lifetime permit because people don't stay in their house for a lifetime. So there's some things to consider. Certainly a possibility. There was actually one of the speakers earlier mentioned, do we look at citywide, make it fit, apply it everywhere, or do we be more specific? And as you could tell from our parking restrictions today, we have generally tried to focus on what's the specific situation and try to deal with the specific situation. If we were to eliminate parking on all narrow streets, we'd eliminate parking in a lot of neighborhoods where it's not the kind of problem because it's a car here and there and people can weave through and they're low speed, low volume streets. So those things are only offered as things to consider if that's a proposal that we should pursue. They're not decision makers at this point. But I'll stop there. I just want to point out that while I'm optimistic for long-term solutions, I think we have learned from our experience that it's often more complicated than it first seems. And with that, and stopping my repeat of other people's comments, I will retire to another chair and be available for any comments or questions.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Hutchison, and thank you to all the folks that came out and took the time to give feedback and actually extend an offer to say, let's sit down together and try to figure out how are we going to make this happen, how are we going to make this situation better. And I would say, while some of these have been going on for a long time, is it fair to say, Mr. Hutchison, that these are still pretty isolated to these certain areas?
With regard to the schools, I think that's fair. Remembering that the drop-off and pickup congestion, which is not necessarily a parking problem, is at virtually every school. The parking-related problems typically are the most common at Lakewood High School. Let me say it this way: the complaints that we get are most commonly related to Lakewood High School. Obviously, we've done restrictions around the other high schools, so there have been issues there as well, not as actively recently.
And then as far as the multifamily, we know that Sunpoint is probably our most challenging situation.
I think it's the one we hear about the most.
Yeah. Okay. And then secondly, I'd just like to say, too, I'd like to thank our police department, our police chief, because there's been a lot of behind-the-scenes work, not only, I guess, through the public works, but through what the police have done in enforcement, in after hours, in overtime, in education, and signs, things that probably most people up here wouldn't see, or maybe most of the public wouldn't see. So I know that that's been a challenge as well. We're in a big city of 150,000 people and have quite a few issues, as you can imagine, in different parts. So I want to thank the police department for their willingness and their eagerness not to be meter maids, but to try to make it an equitable situation. Okay. Mayor Pro Tem Harrison.
Thank you very much for everyone's comment this evening. It's very interesting because as different people made their comments, I've gotten phone calls from people around the Bear Creek K through 8 Bear Creek High School. That's our ward. Dana and I represent that particular area. And what's very interesting is within about 3 days, I got one call from a gentleman who had gotten ticketed and was very upset about the fact that he had been ticketed for his car. And about a day later, I got a call from a resident who said, couldn't you please get these people not parking in front of my driveway? I can't get in and out. So we see that with every action there is a reaction. So we're seeing that it's an issue. It truly is an issue. I have a question to ask, perhaps maybe Mr. Graham. Do we have any ordinance within the city that would prohibit a private party to rent their driveway for short-term parking?
Not that I'm aware of specifically. That might be more of a zoning question. In theory, that could be considered a business. I haven't really addressed that before.
Okay. Just out of curiosity, that might be something that we wanted to look at. Also, the other thing that I was concerned about is how much staff do you think, and this may be a PD question, if we started, there was several areas that we had recent signs go up eliminating parking or controlling parking, and I'll use K through 8. There was some areas there. How much additional staff time has been turned over to kind of policing, for a lack of a better word, that area? Do you have any idea? Is it a lot?
Yeah, Chief McCaskey will answer that question.
Thank you. Ooh, I haven't seen you out of uniform, Chief. Looking pretty spiffy there, my friend.
That gun belt gets a little heavy, and my back gets a little sore.
Welcome.
We have spent a considerable amount of time on parking enforcement, and I'll be honest, I cringe when I come to council meetings at night because we get beat up for not enforcing violations, and then we get the other side where we're not doing enough. I can tell you specifically Lakewood High School is a considerable drain on our resources. And I will tell you, particularly earlier this year, we spent 105 hours of overtime police agents patrolling that area, doing enforcement, trying to, address some of the concerns that were brought to us. That was over $6,000 of overtime budget that I don't have. And recently, I know on the weekends, we're trying to enforce parking regulations. It is a considerable burden on the police department. I don't have specifics, but Lakewood High School is probably the one where we get the most complaints. And we've done several different things with Lakewood High School. We've created posters for the students. Our SRO even did a video for the students to talk about being good neighbors, where to park, things like that. So specifically with Bear Creek, I don't know the exact the hours of enforcement. I would say that without a doubt, Lakewood High School is by far our biggest area where we're utilizing police resources. And I will tell you, since I've been chief, interim and chief, that probably Lakewood High School parking has dominated the majority, not the majority, has been the single most issue that I've been dealing with as chief of police. So it's a, and I'm going to tell you an interesting story. In this, one morning, Director Hutchinson and I met over at 9th and Kipling to look at parking issues at Lakewood High School. I also had my patrol division chief, my special teams traffic commander, my 2 traffic sergeants there with me, Director Hutchinson, and one of his staff. And there was a report of a student that may have had a gun in his backpack. So our SRO and our patrol people were handling that, but the director of security from the school district saw us all at this intersection, pulls up and thinks that this is the command post. And I had to say, no, we're here to look at parking. The school, the SRO, and the other patrol agents are handling that issue. So, when you have that kind of staff time for an issue, there's a considerable drain on our resources. So,
thank you. I thought perhaps it had been a pretty big drain.
Yes.
So thank you.
Okay.
Well, I'm going to leap in and just make a suggestion for all of us to think about. I think we have a tremendous amount of players that are involved in this. I think the school district's involved. I think the families and residents around the school districts are involved. I think the city has some part to this, but I think we need to get everybody to the table and actually start talking about this. I don't think this is something that we can, in any way, shape, or form, make a quick decision on. But I think we also need to get a lot of input from a lot of different people, because as you've and Director Hutchinson mentioned, each one of the schools has a little bit of a different issue as to where that parking or drop-off issue is, and one plan probably won't fit all 4 high schools, and it certainly won't fit the multifamily. So I'm thinking we ought to just create a parking commission. I'll throw that out there for, I don't know what we're going to call it, but get a lot of citizen and other entities involved in this and try to come up with some good solutions.
And I would agree, Counselor. And somebody said it earlier, and Jay reiterated, there's not one size solution that fits everything. And Lakewood High School's on a small footprint. It's our biggest high school. It's on a small footprint of land. There's narrow streets. There's irrigation or drainage ditches there. It creates some unique issues for us, and it's in a neighborhood. And we don't have the complaints from the other high schools. Rarely have we ever heard of other parking complaints. And hopefully I just didn't jinx myself in our department by saying that, but we don't have the issues with the other schools. So,
thank you, Chief. You might want to hang out down here, if that's okay. Mr. Abel.
Thank you. I got into this as I was campaigning 2 years ago. Ramey's been involved for 5 years. The neighbor's been involved for 5 years. I'm glad to see that we're finally getting all stakeholders together to come and talk about the issue and presenting all sides of the problem. That's one of the things we've missed. I've heard this characterized as a couple of people complaining. 99 people signed petitions expressing their concern about the parking issue around Lakewood High School. we, in reaction to some frustration at not getting very far in discussions and bringing people to the table, the signs went up on 9th Avenue in reaction to the complaints and not being able to move forward. Now we need to move forward. I agree that we probably don't need a mediator. That suggestion came from elsewhere. We've had a couple of interesting Ward 1 meetings in the last couple of months. There has been a good, firm discussion, and I think we're making some progress. We need to find something that's going to be mutually beneficial, and as Mr. Schechter said, we're not going to find a one-size-fits-all solution, and we're not going to find a solution that makes everybody happy. In fact, I agree with him. If we come up with a solution that irritates both sides equally, we're probably there. But it is something we need to work on. I agree that the problems are citywide, and each problem will probably take a different solution. The Lakewood High School parking issue is going to take more than one solution. We have to find a combination of things that will work and try to make it as mutually beneficial as possible. And again, I think getting all of our stakeholders together is the way to do that. But I'd like to leave one thought. 2 weeks ago on Monday when we had the hailstorm, I got an email from a gentleman who has been one of those 99 folks who have expressed their concern in no uncertain terms. And the email said, as I send this, my living room is full of Lakewood High School students. They were caught in the hailstorm, and they were getting beat over the head with huge hailstones. He invited them into his house so they would be safe. And I think that the concern for these kids is primary among all of us and among the neighbors, as well as the parents. Certainly is for me. So the neighbors are my constituents, the kids are my constituents, the parents are my constituents, and I want to find something that works for everybody as closely as we can make it, tailor it to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I have Miss Shakti. Bless you. Somebody.
A couple questions. This one we might not have an answer to, but I thought it was interesting. The difference in the rate of taking buses was pretty dramatic. Do we have any idea why? It goes from like 1% to 12%.
I do not. It's voluntary, first of all, as far as I know, but I can't tell you why.
An interesting thing to add to the conversation as we go, probably. Other questions? So if there are areas that we want to limit parking, is there a method of doing that works better for the police department?
Counselor, I don't know if there really is a good answer to that. We work with Public Works and placing of these signs, and we look at the traffic flow and things like that. But there's really probably not a one answer that there's a better way to enforce or to move traffic or parking than another.
Well, one thing, it seems to me that the technique where you have to chalk and then ticket might be more time consuming.
Yes, and I will tell council, the police department does not have the resources to do that kind of enforcement because, for example, a patrol agent would need to be at a certain spot at say 6 a.m., chalk those tires, and then hopefully not get any other calls for service, and then 4 hours later come back and look and see if those cars have been moved or haven't, and that's highly unlikely that we'd be able to do that.
And between signage and permitting, do you have thoughts?
And again, they're good ideas. They're very labor intensive. Any type of parking enforcement's very labor intensive, and frankly, we don't have the resources. And I think from a policy perspective, utilizing trained police agents that have extensive training and background to do parking enforcement is not a good use of taxpayer funds. I think if you were looking at parking enforcement, I think that you would need to probably add employees and add something else. But the police, it's not a good use of police resources, and I don't mean that's not an important issue, but in the priority of our calls, it's a low priority call. And parking is very labor intensive to enforce.
Okay. And now I'm moving to my next question. At some point, this is probably a legal question. Can we require Sun Point to allow residents to park in their visitor spots? So Sun Point is interesting because there's enough parking, but it's not totally clear what we have the power to do. So can you help clarify that?
Well, it's an interesting question. What you're saying is, can we force the residents who live in an area with private parking to park in the private parking and not park in the...
No, they're not allowed to. So each unit gets a certain number of spots, and they're allowed to park in those spots. But then there are, I think, 110 spots that are reserved for visitor parking, and so residents are not allowed to park there.
I see what you're saying. As Mr. Hutchison mentioned during his presentation, we can't really go back and change the rules, generally speaking. So if they have a certain amount of resident parking, that's probably what they were obligated to have under our zoning code. And they have additional parking for visitors. So we can't really go back and retroactively change the rules on them. But that's something we could look into to see if there are other options that we could consider legally.
And is the breakdown of between residential and visitor something that we have in our zoning code? Like is that laid out at the beginning, or is this just how they've done it? And is that relevant?
This is probably a better question for Mr. Parker, but...
But you could answer the "is that relevant" part.
I don't know that it is.
Okay.
I may be able to add a little bit, having been here a long time. As Mr. Olson mentioned, the entire Lakewood Estates area began development in the 1980s, and it was developed with an official development plan that had both multifamily and single-family areas in it. So it was developed at a very different time. And not under the current zoning ordinance, probably not under the preceding zoning ordinance either. So that's one of the reasons that we've not addressed current zoning requirements, because they aren't able to be retroactively imposed, even though that topic will come back to you. That's not a complete answer to your question, but hopefully that's helpful.
So the other solution to to the Sun Point situation that I'm aware of would be to put more no parking signs, just to put pressure on it's sort of like the school. We're putting pressure on this third party to come up with their own solution. Do you have other thoughts in terms of what might alleviate the parking issue at Sun Point?
You know, I didn't come tonight prepared to make specific recommendations. There is a distinction between Sun Point and the schools, however, in that there is parking. Well, I'm not sure it's relevant, so I'll drop that. But the city could do something on the public streets in the public street portion of Lakewood Estates that would make it much more difficult for anybody else to park on those public streets, including folks in Sun Point. Whether or not that's the right answer, I would not sit here and recommend that right now.
You're saying that like it could put up signage or whatever that, right?
Some kind of restriction, as was suggested by Mr. Olson. I wouldn't sit here tonight and try to recommend that or a variation of that until we get, whoever we is, get a chance to look more completely at the question. So it would be indirect.
Okay. In terms of, so I think that the basic point that there might need to be more conversations with a lot of different people at the table is true. I'm concerned about the south side of 9th and in the interim how we should leave that. I think that it's along the school property, and we have grandparents who can't get to the sports games. Like, I think we've gone too far in terms of the south side of 9th.
All right. Thank you. We can also do the sign language clap. Thank you.
Which is only one part of the larger complexity of parking in that area that I think needs to get figured out. Just a sec, let me look at my notes. I guess just to add in terms of that larger complexity that needs to be figured out, my the two concerns that come to mind in terms of finding the right solution are the narrow streets, so like that trash truck seemed a little ridiculous, and we don't want kids crossing Kipling, sort of pushing kids out issue. But that's what I have.
May I interrupt, Mayor, please? I have a little more information about ridership on busing, and those numbers are impacted by the 7th to 9th grade students, especially at Alameda High School. So that's why those numbers were higher. And due to demographics and the choice in population, as well as a lot of those kids don't have bus route access. So I just got some intel from a school administrator who's sitting in the audience. And so that's the reason why our Alameda numbers were higher in terms of busing. So to answer your question.
Thank you, Mr. Elliott and Bell, for that information. So we'll go to Councilor Roybal, Vincent, and Johnson.
Okay. Real quick, it sounds to me, and I've been listening about parking, different issues, different areas in the city, and each area is unique to the city, and I see that. Every part of the city has a different issue and trying to resolve it. Lakewood Estates is frankly very frustrating to me. I believe that the stakeholders need to come together. We've had some attitudes in the past that, you know, the city's not going to tell me what we are or we're not going to do. And I think it's coming to the point right now where at Lakewood Estates, it's time to have that hard conversation where we're both willing to sit down at the table and talk, and we can get this resolved. If not, the end result is that we move forward with parking restrictions and force the HOA to come into compliance. Now, on the other parking issues, like Lakewood High School, you know, same thing, having conversations, having a great sitting down at the table and saying, okay, here's all the issues that we have. We have the ADA compliance. We need to sweep the streets. We have, you know, kids that are parking here and there. You know, with this high density or with more population coming in from the 60s to the 70s to the 80s, we're growing. And one of the things that we may have inadvertently not really looked at is the growth of our community. Lakewood High School is landlocked, and trying to develop that with new programs and trying to make Lakewood an exceptional school, which they have done, and I'm very proud of them. But we kind of lost sight on the future growth. And what I'm saying to that is that we gave a little bit of parking for playgrounds or soccer fields, which is not a bad thing, but then we didn't address the future parking. So we kind of let that, sit aside. Now you add on 20 years, and all of a sudden you're saying, well, what happened to parking? We need more parking. We have more kids. We have more population coming in. And as you all admitted, that the population of Lakewood High School has increased, which that is a very nice school. That being said, is that we need to reach out to the district, and maybe we can come up with some solutions. There's some properties on Kipling and Ninth there that are on the corner. Maybe that can be developed into parking. There might be some other avenues, possibly on 9th Avenue or on the north side of the school. I would just put it out there that maybe we can make some island parkings that are going into the property of the school district, and maybe have a combination of that and some other things that are solutions that we can help alleviate that. And I hear parents and grandparents that they want to be part of their family. This is all family, and I understand that. But I feel that we need to sit down and have a very plain and robust conversation of what the issues are, and I believe we can get them resolved. I hope we can. And if we work together as the city and the school district, I think we can come up with some solutions that will alleviate a lot of these issues. So I would like to recommend, like Councilor Harrison said, is that we bring all the stakeholders into a cabinet room, sit them down and saying, here's the issues, how can we get them together, and be positive about it, and see if we can work together to get this done. I know we can get it done fairly quickly. We just need to say, we're going to do this. So that's my comment for the night.
Nice birthday comment. Thank you. I have Ms. Vincent, then Johnson, Gutwein, Coop, Franks, Wickman, and Shakti.
Everybody. Just one thing I'd forgotten totally as we were talking about the inability to have more kids in the car, driving, and I know that does make an impact. And it reminded me of the very first time that I had my first encounter with the Lakewood Police was a discussion about the fact that it was not really legal to have 13 people in my parents' station wagon driving them around up and down Colfax. It's okay. That's why we have laws like we do, I think, today. Other people like me. Yeah. But the question I did have is, have we looked at the ADA compliance? Is it ADA compliant? I heard that it was not, that it was sectioned off.
The obligation for accessible parking spaces is an obligation of the provider of the facilities. The facilities we're talking, I'll get real technical first and then back up a step. So the facilities we're dealing with are school facilities, and the nearest parking spaces, as you saw in the Lakewood High School aerial photo, is quite some distance away. So that's the technical answer. The city is not obligated to provide accessible parking spaces on public streets, and we don't anywhere else in town. But the fact is that up until the recent changes on the parking restrictions along 9th, if you got there while there was still space along 9th, anybody could park there, including people who either needed to drop off equipment or drop off kids or even just drop off somebody who needed a shorter route to the stands or park that closer distance, they could. That's been eliminated on evenings and weekends. That south side of 9th currently does not allow parking legally on evenings and weekends. It's further. There's a further factor, and that is that, as I understand it, and I've heard this secondhand, there was maybe it was a grant. I'm not sure how the funding occurred to make it accessible from the public sidewalk on 9th to the baseball field stands. So that investment was made by somebody, and now you can't stop to utilize that investment for the purpose in which it was created. So, two parts to the answer. One is the problem is real. It's technically not a city problem, but I don't want to focus on that, because that we've got a lot of that kind of stuff where we have different jurisdictions with different obligations and authority.
Okay, so I'd like to offer, if we do have this committee, that is one thing that they seriously look at, is the drop-off and the accessibility for people.
Thank you. Ms. Johnson.
Thank you. This night has been a long time in coming, and I appreciate that the city is giving this an evening to itself and a study session. Thank you. I'd also like to thank all of the people that came tonight in your honest and open testimony. I appreciate it. Everybody needs to hear all sides of this. Thank you. It's apparent that folks are not going to give up their cars, and neither are students. Increased density and our zoning ordinance do play a role in this. Let me get to the situation around Lakewood High School, because that's what I'm actually most familiar with. The reality is, none of us here tonight were involved when the seeds of this were planted. But we are needing to find solutions to a situation that we did not create. Originally, when Lakewood High School was built, it was built for 850 students. 10 years ago, when it was rebuilt, it was for 1,700 students. I'm hearing different numbers. Additionally, the orientation to the front entrance was changed. In retrospect, that should have been done differently. At the time it was rebuilt, little consideration was actually given regarding doubling a high school and looking at the parking needs of a high school regarding students and driving. Since I have been on council, the major attempt to address this has actually been signage by the city. Recently, as you've heard, more signage was put up with increased enforcement. This was a recommendation of ACIC, and the signage did not go up until that recommendation happened. All schools have some kind of signage, and they're specific to each neighborhood. That is absolutely appropriate. And I do believe that there's likely not one answer that is going to be specific for all of the schools. Unfortunately, the issues of parking and speeding, the traffic around the schools have bled into other areas and have created a lot of confusion, a lot of anger, a lot of frustration. Things like student behavior, smoking, loitering, jumping on a roof. To be fair, I honestly believe the majority of the students at that school, 95% of them, do not behave poorly. There's a few students that are causing increased frustration and anger within the neighborhood. And last, another issue that has come up is the increased usage of the fields to 7 days a week. Also, accompanying that is the noise from the speakers that are being used. Everything at this point has become a flashpoint. There is increased road congestion, even in the evenings. Garrison is defaulting, in my opinion, in the afternoon and in the morning. I live close by. What are some of the solutions? First, I think we really need to have an honest dialogue with the school board, with council. Sit down. I believe that they have been approached to meet with us. I'd like to see us pursue that. We have a new principal, Dan, who I for the first time met Saturday. I was very impressed and appreciated the way that you are addressing this and your spirit that you're bringing to the table. Also, we have a new superintendent. And to be honest with you, I am extremely hopeful now. I do think that there needs to be a rethinking of using the fields 7 days a week. There needs to be an openness to using fields at other high schools. But to be honest with you, I don't know what the quality of those fields are. And the athletic programs, they really need to have good fields for the kids. This is ultimately about the students. I'd like to see us take a look, see the school board and the school take a look at increasing parking on the school campus itself. I know that's going to be tricky. There is a grassy knoll on the west side. At least look at it and see if that's feasible. Ultimately, the population at Lakewood High School is going to need to be reduced, and that is not going to happen overnight. Dan was talking about that Saturday. That's just not going to happen immediately. I'm not sure why. I've heard other people say that IB programs have been tried at other schools. To me, that makes sense. Lakewood is a success. That's why the school is bulging, because parents want their kids to go there. It's an awesome school. It's an awesome program that you're providing. But I'd like to see the school board look at other schools to see if you can't use the template from Lakewood. Take that to some of the other high schools and try and get some of the pressure off of Lakewood. Last, one of the solutions is basically going to be, folks, we're going to have to look at reopening our zoning ordinance. And there's language in there regarding density, regarding parking, as it deals with group homes. And again, I support a moratorium short term until we can get a handle on some of these things. In closing, the environment and culture have at times been a little bit combative and a little bit confrontational. And that was why the suggestion was made to have a mediator. It was done in good faith to try and bring people together in an honest way. I believe in humanity, and I honestly know that an honest resolution to this can be found. It needs to be found soon. We all have to come to the table with an open heart and mind. At the end of the day, we all live next to each other. And ultimately, there is way too much at stake for us not to find honest resolution and to do it in a way that we can be friends at the end of the day. And again, I thank you all for coming. I appreciate all comments, and I am listening, and we will find resolution to this. Thank you.
Thank you. before I go to Councilor Gutwein, I'll just mention, put in a nice plug. Alameda High School does have an IB program, and Green Mountain High School has an Academies program. And I'm not sure what Bear Creek has, but I bet what they have, it's amazing. Ms. Gutwein.
Thank you. Thank you so much to everyone for being here. And I just also want to thank Jay for that awesome presentation, but also all the work that you have put in over the years. And our police department also for all the extra work that you've done to enforce this issue. And I think it's unfortunate that it has been such a drain on one of the most important services that we provide in the city. So thank you for all the effort. And thank you to everyone that's here tonight. This is so awesome to see so many people involved. And I really want to thank the people from the school and whose kids go to the school or grandkids go to the school for being here tonight. In the past conversations, I think that voice has been missing, and I know it's really hard with kids and students and all that stuff to make it here, and it's so important that you're here tonight, so thanks for taking the time. I think Lakewood, we've heard a lot about this, but it's just Lakewood High is such a source of pride for our city, and so I'm really thankful for Lakewood High and the IB program and all the opportunities it offers our kids and my kids who will someday be going to high school in Lakewood. So, and also just the baseball program too, because my kids are both enrolled in the baseball, they're softball and t-ball at this point, but you just learn such amazing values. These athletics and education is so important to our community. And so thank you for being here. And to the neighborhood, I also it's important that you feel safe in your homes and that you get to enjoy the quality of life that you've invested in. So thanks to everybody for being here to be a part of the solution. And I'm going to steal a line from Jay and say, this is my dream. He said, this is my dream about parking. But I think that, we really want to make sure this is a great place to live, work, and play, and go to school. And I want to support Karen's idea of having a stakeholder meeting. I also would love to have some kind of committee, like a long-term council committee, similar to some of the other committees that we have, where we could have, a council person and maybe, the mayor and the head of the school board and our representative in Lakewood, superintendent, and city manager to meet, quarterly or monthly to really continue to build that relationship and have these conversations preemptively and ongoing, because this isn't the only time that our neighborhoods and our schools interact, and anything that we can do to foster that and get everyone at the table. So I would like to put that suggestion, and I would also love to volunteer to be the person on that committee, but it could certainly change every year. The other thing I want to add to this conversation is something that a few people have brought up is kids driving more, and can they bike more to our schools? And so I think that this is definitely a cultural thing. We all drive, but I think our city has been investing more and more in being a bikeable city and being a healthy and active city. And so if there are things that we can do to continue, for example, making sure our schools are on in our bike master plan, so that the routes to the schools are, they have safe bike lanes, they have sharrows, and they have whatever they need, so that as parents we can feel comfortable in sending our kid out on their bike and that they're not going to get hit by a car. There's programs starting in early education, like Safe Routes to School. And can we continue to invest in those and apply for grants in those? And those are, believe it or not, shown to reduce traffic 5 to 10% around the schools. And that's not a huge number, but that's something that I think you would feel in the neighborhoods if there were 10% less cars on the road. And then, of course, there's the benefit of, healthy kids getting to schools in a safe way. And then also, I agree with Councilor Shakti. I love these long-term conversations, but I also am concerned about, in the short term, the parking on the south side of 9th and the accessibility there. I hope that we can look at that sooner than later. And then finally, Councilor Roybal, I support what you had suggested about Sun Point. It's very frustrating to know that there is parking that is not being used, and we should see if we can do anything to move that along. Okay, without making it a long night any longer, thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Coop.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't have any questions, and just listening to this, I kind of have an observation. In that, is this there were rules put in place, and I'll talk about Lakewood High School since that was the big subject tonight. And there were rules put in place that affected a lot of people that were not part of that conversation. So how does this fit into, isn't this a council, should we look at setting a policy in some way in how these signs are put up wherever in the city? Because it sounds to me, well, thank you for not everybody was part of that conversation. And so that's just an observation I have, is that should this be part of a larger council decision? Yeah, for the whole city. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Coop, and I can come back to that later. Ms. Franks.
I guess I have more, rather than questions, just a few observations, kind of approaching this more from my standpoint of a project manager. The things that I would be real interested in knowing if it was mine to solve the problem would be to first quantify the issue. How many vehicles do we have that are off campus? So, to get a number. So then we can kind of understand the magnitude of what we're trying to solve. Because sometimes that will start to feed into creative ways that you can move forward. I'm looking at a Google map now, which it doesn't say what time of the day it was taken, but the parking lot's not fully utilized. So I would want to have a utilization type of it to see, are we really maximizing that? And I know a woman spoke tonight and said, well, the fee is cheaper than the maybe the tickets are, but you have to realize some people are risk adverse and some people are risk tolerant. So there's a wide spectrum of people. So you're trying to understand, what is the overflow? Is what we currently have being utilized to the maximum potential? I understand there might have been some pushback against maybe mediation, and maybe that's kind of maybe too strong, but I would say if we bring stakeholders together, that it's a facilitated discussion, that it actually starts out by having some creative what-if thinking. It also asks the school district what things they've already considered and what things may have been cost prohibitive, because we don't want to take those things off the table just because something is cost prohibitive, maybe because their funding is limited. That doesn't mean there's not ways to solve those funding issues. So I'd really like to kind of that whole alternatives analysis, options, but what am I really dealing with? And I think it'd be really helpful to quantify that. Also, I think it's important that we, in this facilitated discussion, which is where I'd like to see it go, people doing their homework, bringing their ideas, bringing their what-if, pie in the skies, because sometimes those can generate good ideas, but to get at least 1 to 3 members of that group that come together that are from the student body themselves. I think that sometimes we may be thinking, about something and not bringing the broadest swath of ideas forward. So, because I was looking at that piece of that'd be the eastern side of the property, and it looks like there's a drainage area, and I don't know if that can be put underground, the infrastructure, so I'd like to see if we can kind of take a look at that and say, could we build some underground infrastructure? What would that cost? What could be some possible funding mechanisms? So this is actually very exciting for me. I mean, there's a problem to be solved, but I think it has to be done in a way where it doesn't just put a group of people who already have, you know, opposing views and different things together without some good structure and some other things around that to make sure it's highly productive and that we can get to an answer sooner rather than later. So just a lot of observations. There was no question in there.
Thank you very much. Mr. Wickman.
In interest of time, I'll pass on the thanking everybody. I have two quick throwaway thoughts. Number one, in my hometown of Illinois, we had the same problem. And what the school district did was buy a couple of houses across the street, and that eliminated those complainers and got extra parking. Second thought was that I saw a couple pictures of some very broad streets. I don't know if they're around the high school or not, but I saw a couple pictures. Why not put some diagonal slanted parking spots along those streets? Now, to get to my real point. What struck me tonight is we seem to be micromanaging where to put the signs up and stuff like that. And I don't feel comfortable. I don't know the situation around Lakewood High School. And I just think it's counterproductive. Seems to me what we ought to be doing is looking at a generic solution. And we had a constituent come in earlier and offer I thought was a very good solution. And that was that we have an ordinance that says that any person can kind of self-regulate the parking in front of their house. And what would prohibit, the city would sit there and say, you can't park for more than 4 hours in front of my house unless it's okay with me. Now, the advantage of that, it would be self-enforcing. Right now, we're putting signs up and we're expecting the police to go out and enforce it, and we know that's not going to work. But if it's a situation where each individual homeowner can see a car out in front of the house and see how long it's out there, if it doesn't bother them, fine, let it go. But if it truly is an inconvenience to that person and they're parked out there for more than 4 hours, they can get on the phone and call the police, and they've already marked the chalk or whatever. Anyway, the police doesn't have to get involved in figuring it all out. And whether it happens the first time or not, by the time the second or third time comes around, the person that's parking out in front of the house will get the message that parking spot is not welcome. And then that way we can do it on a case-by-case basis where every individual can kind of self-regulate. And I think that make it a lot easier for all of us. That's all I have.
So I have Ms. Shockey, then Mr. Abel.
It seems like we're leaning towards creating a forum for conversations. I guess one question is, are we creating two forums? So one for Lakewood Estates and one for Lakewood High School? Because it seems like it might get confusing if we don't. And the other is, I think that it's really important that our perspective of cost and the realistic costs of the different solutions is forefront in the conversations. And then in terms of the signs, the acting more quickly to take down what might be the signs that are making it so that not everybody can get to the baseball games. City just put up the signs, so it doesn't seem overly complicated to fix that problem.
Mr. Abel.
Well, I agree with that. It will take a while to figure out a comprehensive solution for Lakewood High School. Jay, can we put up handicap signs even though it is not our, quote, responsibility? Can we set aside some handicap spaces on the south side of 9th? Could we?
I'm pausing because, as I said earlier, we haven't done that. I'm not thinking of a particular reason that would prohibit that, which I think is your question.
Thank you. Yes, it is. I think we should move.
Counselor, could I just comment on that?
Yes, please.
Right now, we're allowing parking during the daytime.
Right.
It's open parking. if we put up handicap parking, then that restricts that parking further. So we create more issues during the daytime because we're forcing that parking away. But then we are allowing the parking of handicap. So we could do that. It would just create other issues if we just strictly made it handicap parking.
The reality is, as someone pointed out, there are about 30 spots over there, and if you're not one of the first 30 cars there, and you have limited mobility, you don't have any access anyway. But I would like to see us set aside some of those spots for handicapped or people with mobility concerns, even during the day. If someone has mobility concerns, and that may also help with the church. We do need to realize that none of the people on the north side of 9th, none of those residents, have a parking spot in front of their home. They're all off limits to parking on the north side. So we need to make some room for those folks as well. What about a loading zone? I mean, there are people without mobility problems that arrive at that ballpark with an ice chest, a couple of lawn chairs, kids with their stuffed animals or whatever, little brothers and sisters, picnic basket. Make it a little bit easier for folks to get there from 9th Avenue. But I think we need to look at that and get something in place sooner than later to try to make it a bit more accessible. I also understand that there's not really an accessible path from the high school and its parking lot to these fields. So perhaps the district could work on that. My kids went to school at Green Mountain High School, and the path to the baseball field and the football, the B-team football team, were not easily maneuvered. I went out there today at the suggestion of some citizens, and sure enough, there has been a very nice path built from their parking lot to both the baseball diamond and the junior varsity field. So that needs to be part of the equation too. I think if we can make it more accessible from the high school parking lot, we might alleviate some of those problems. And to Councilwoman Franks' question, 13, 14 months ago when we started looking at this again, a year ago in April, the problem, I believe, Chief, was 50 to 60 vehicles, 40 to 50 vehicles that were generally the problem.
Yes, sir. At least on 9th Avenue, I think Jay and I looked at that, and we thought there were about 30 to 35 vehicles. Probably throughout the neighborhood, you're probably talking, I would say generously 60 vehicles are probably creating the issues.
And I don't know what we do with those 60 vehicles, but again, I think we need to move to make those fields a little more accessible, but we also need to allow some space for the neighbors to park over there. I mean, the folks on the north side of 9th have no spots. So, thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right. So I kind of have a summary of what I've heard, and before I go to that, I just want to take a moment because I know our staff spent some time in another community looking at the suggestion that Council Wickman spoke about, and I just want to get some feedback from staff, whether that's Mr. Hutchison or the police chief, on how that works in the other communities.
Yes, sir. We did visit another community in Adams County that has that parking ordinance that you can only park on a residential street for 4 hours without the homeowner's permission. And much like us, that organization did not do a lot of enforcement because it was a low priority, and there were just a lot of issues with it. And then one of the things that you have to, if there is enforcement, generally the homeowner has to, when I say sign a complaint, they have to be the reporting party, which means they have to be willing to go to court as a witness on those cases, and they found that the homeowners were reluctant to do that. They wanted someone cited, but they didn't want to have to go to court to testify, because it's going to court's a little uncomfortable, and it's not, a lot of people are uncomfortable with that. So while they did have that ordinance, they did not feel that it was beneficial, that it was easily enforceable, and that it made really any significant difference in their parking issues.
Thank you. All right, so this is what I've heard. I've heard a lot of different things. So I think what I'm getting at is some sort of parking commission. And what does that structure look like? And I think we have some urgency in some of the issues. And we also have an opportunity because school is out. So we could try to get something done, especially school-related, before the kids are back. I believe we need a commitment from the school district to potentially be a part of this conversation. I don't think it's limited to our high schools. When you look at our elementary schools and kind of the dropping and picking up programs with our elementary schools as well as our junior highs, maybe all encompassed into this conversation. And to Councilor Shakti's point, I don't think it's separate at all from the issues that we're hearing about pertaining to our folks in Ward 3. So we have stakeholders here tonight. It would seem like we would need to get, especially related to Mr. Olson's group, the property management companies. And I did reach out to one, and that's why I asked, because my understanding was that there are two. One of them seemed receptive, but then I was told that may not be the folks that we really want to be reaching out to. So it would be citizens, stakeholders who are here, school district, and our staff, and council. And so putting that all together could be, how big do you want it? It could be big. It could be a representative from each ward, and then I'm open to suggestions. Ms. Hodson, looks like you'd like to weigh in.
I would, if you'd allow me, we do have a great resource, which is through Jefferson County, and they offer expert facilitators. This is what they do for a living, and it happens to be at no cost to the city. So I have already reached out to them in the event that may be the direction that you wanted to head. So we may be able to bring a large group together with a facilitator from the county and let them help kind of unpack what those issues are and how to best approach those. We have different interest areas with the multifamily and then around the high schools. We also have issues that are really imminent to deal with right away, that maybe we can have some solutions first and then look at the longer term, like some of the issues around 9th Avenue and the access to the fields, et cetera. In speaking to the administration at the schools, they do have some ideas after hearing some of these latest conversations. So it would be really important for them to weigh in and to so we can listen to what kind of potential solutions that they might have. After all, they live there and manage those facilities. So maybe, I think we'll find some good resource there as well. So that's a thought. If you want, we can reach out. They know of this issue. It would just be a phone call to get this started.
And when you say the county, you mean Jefferson County Mediation?
Yes, sir, I do.
Thank you. Not Jefferson County.
Oh, not the schools. You're right.
Or the county.
That's what I meant.
Ms. Franks.
Mediation.
The only thing I would caution is bringing together a very diverse group of people to begin with. I would probably recommend, and they may recommend as well, that you do some focus groups. You bring some folks together, get some real good consolidated ideas. It's just that I can just imagine the breadth and depth of the discussions, and folks are going to want to come to talk about the things that are most important to them. So I think if we can kind of look at maybe doing 3 or 4, whatever that looks like, maybe it's schools, maybe it's high density, maybe it's narrow streets, pulling those focus groups together and then having those groups then kind of have a representative to come together. Too many folks and you're going to find that it's just not going to be very productive, is my experience.
Ms. Harrison.
I would just add representatives for some of the PTOs or PTAs, whatever you want to call them, in the school, because I think those parents are the dropping off and picking up portion to this question. Thank you.
So, Ms. Hodson, if we could, and I think that's a good point that was just brought up by Ms. Franks, let's see, in their experience of facilitation, how best they want to handle and maybe seek a recommendation. But there is an urgency, and so we'd like to see this taken care of sooner than later.
Got it. Thank you.
And so I hope the folks who are here tonight are also available to be a part of this, and let's try to get it hammered out before we have our kids going back to school. And
It looks like we have contact information as well on the people who spoke. At least we have phone numbers. Mayor, may I ask that our interim superintendent just say a few words, since he took the time to be with us this evening? It's Terry Elliott, and he's the interim superintendent and has been a part of really helpful conversations during his term. This is Terry Elliott.
Good evening, Mr. Elliott. Thank you.
Good evening, and thank you for inviting us here tonight. And I think I have a unique perspective. I was a student of Lakewood High School in the 80s. I was a teacher in the 2000s there, and I've had the pleasure this past year of listening to a lot of these concerns. So I've seen that problem, and I can tell you in the 80s, 2000s, parking was a problem. We built that school actually at the time that I was on the Design Advisory Committee as a staff member for the new building. It was built at a time when we had over 1,800 students in the building. It was set around 1750, knowing that your high schools can accommodate larger than your actual seating capacity. After we built the school, lots of things changed. The laws on driving changed. The number of activities that all schools offer has increased, and utilization of fields has increased. And we try and be a good community citizen, offering our fields and access to all our facilities to everybody. I want to point out that your city council support team here behind me that's been speaking tonight has been very proactive in reaching out to us. And as a matter of fact, Principal Dan Bach and Chief Dan have already kind of committed to getting together on a regular basis and bringing a group of stakeholders together and working on this problem. We will support full 100% any type of committee that comes together, stakeholder group, and the facilitation that Ms. Hodgins is going to put together. We want to be a good community partner. Lakewood is a proud part of Jefferson County Public Schools, as are all our schools. And having been a principal at elementary and at a high school, pick-up, drop-off is a nightmare everywhere. It's the reality. We built our schools for people to walk, for kids to ride bikes, at a time when that's what was the norm, and it is not the norm today. Students choice in, their parents drop them off. Lakewood is conveniently located off of 6th Avenue and Kipling, making it a very easy school for people to choice into because there's a lot of good highway traffic or easy access from that perspective, which complicates it even further. So we appreciate you having us here tonight. We thank all the work that the city has put into this, the law enforcement and their efforts to try and bring some resolution in the short term, but know that these problems have taken a long time to develop, with lots of complicating factors, and it'll take a lot of effort to unwind them. And I think that call for patience, cooperation, and teamwork is what's going to solve this in the long run. We appreciate that because I certainly hear that in the room tonight. And I thank everybody for their time and certainly for the team here and all their efforts to try and work on this problem.
Thank you. Mr. Elliott, thank you for coming out. Mr. Bell, thank you for being here too. We appreciate it. And, it's a challenging issue, but we really care about our residents and we care about our schools, and most of all, we care about our kids. So I am optimistic that we can find, as the screen says, long-term solutions and hopefully some short-term as well. Ms. Johnson.
Thank you. I appreciate the idea of a facilitator. And Councillor Franks, your idea of having small groups is the right way to go. I had hoped to get that started at one point, but it became very apparent to me because of the increased anger and frustration and emotions. I was not the right person to try and lead that. So I tried to back out of it, but should have done a better job of just canceling that particular meeting. But you're right, small groups is the way to go.
So I have a consensus from council to move forward with the idea of creating a citizen and a stakeholder committee. Yes. Okay. So we have consensus there. The other suggestion was that we create an ongoing committee, which my understanding was there used to be some sort of a committee that used to meet with our kind of school board regularly. Is there a consensus from council to create something like that too? Okay, we can start working on that and bring that back to council.
That's pretty common for other cities. I know that, and they do that currently.
Thank you.
A mess.
Welcome back.
Boy, I'll tell you. Is that just the school board and the council, or are there others involved in that?
That would just be the City of Lakewood and school board.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Yep. Great. Okay, and then one other thing that I just want to touch on before I reopen public comment. I don't have anybody who's signed up, but in case people want to speak. Mr. Coop mentioned the sign policy, and you're absolutely right. I mean, this kind of got a little bit to the point where things were being directed, and I think what's come out of our retreat and different things is really trying to find that separation of council and policy versus really the staff level type things. And we need to set that good policy that then council or staff can then implement and really make sure we're not blending it, if that makes sense. And we're all learning together, and right, wrong, or indifferent. And I think that's kind of what happened and how we started having signs here and there. And so to have a real solid policy is, I hope, is I think the way that we can move forward and not have this happen again. All right, I'll reopen public comment. Anybody wish to speak? Mr. Bach. Ms. Duffy?
Can I say one more thing?
Sure.
I'm very pleased. I'm very pleased that you're going to go forward with this. As we presented that 35-page document to you in March with the 2012 and the 2013, but it sounds like there's really going to be something done now. The one thing I would caution you is as we did our research, we didn't find that there was much difference between the high density at Sunpoint and the school. It's still the same issue. We tried to look at them differently, but I'll just caution you, separating the two, you're going to wind up putting them back together because the parking in the neighborhoods, whether it's by a student or someone from a high-density condominium complex, it creates the same issues. So you might want to look at trying to keep that issue together.
Thank you. Mr. Bach? Good evening. Welcome to City Council. Welcome to your new position at
Thanks. I like
Lakewood
to call
High
this my
School.
summer three-piece suit. Shoes, jeans, and a shirt.
We like it.
There we go. Good evening. Thank you for hosting a large variety of people this evening. And so I represent 2,100 students at Lakewood High School, and at 3 minutes a pop, I'm just requesting 6,300 minutes. I hope you guys are okay with that this evening. So get ready. First of all, I want to say what a fortunate community we have. We have 4 incredible high schools in addition to a handful of charter schools, option schools. That's part of what makes this city great. And so kudos to Jefferson County Public Schools. Kudos to Alameda, Bear Creek, Green Mountain, and Lakewood High School. Part of the reason why I moved to Ward 1 is because I believe in the schools, first and foremost as a parent. And as my career has progressed, it's my great honor and privilege to take over Lakewood High School in 2 weeks. So I'm not the principal just yet. Some things that I want you to know about Lakewood High School is, first and foremost, we have incredible kids. We have students that are serving the community after they're done going to classes all day, after they're done playing basketball or being at band practice or doing art or whatever. They then go out and work with students with special needs. They go out and work at the Jeffco Action Center. We have kids that go out and pick up trash. We have kids that do incredible things, as does Alameda, Bear Creek, and Green Mountain. What an incredible resource our youth are for this community. Some things to know about Lakewood High School, and Mr. Elliott stole a little bit of my thunder, but Lakewood High School was built in 1957. I looked at the plaque this morning right by my bicycle because I have the fortunate nature of biking to school from time to time when I'm not wearing dress clothes, at least. And when the building was rebuilt in 2007, yes, indeed, it was, the goal was that, it would be about 1,750 kids. But as we opened up that new building, we were already at 1,850 kids. Lakewood High School is an incredible school because, first and foremost, we have incredible students. That brings in incredible kids, and fortunately, hopefully, we have an incredible administration for the foreseeable future. And so it's a place where kids want to be because it's got incredible culture. It's got a welcoming culture where I think parents and community members come in on a very regular basis and say, man, I was sure pleased that a student opened the door for me and welcomed me and carried this into the building. And so we are so fortunate that our students welcome the people that come into our building. As you know, 5280, which is sort of the Denver Metro magazine, regularly ranks Lakewood High School as one of the top high schools. But if you look at the data a little bit closer, we're also one of the most diverse high schools on that list. So of the top 10, the last time around, only 2 were public high schools, and one of them was Lakewood High School. Same with the U.S. News and World Report. When that comes out, Lakewood High School's diversity is second to none compared to many of the schools that are predominantly upper middle class and white. That's what makes Lakewood a great place. We have, this year, just so you know, this year we have 3 Betcher Scholars. That's unheard of at a high school. In addition to that, we have a Daniels Scholar. We have a student that won a golf caddy scholarship, full ride at Boulder. We also have over 15 students who are going to serve our military. We have a student who is going to the Service Academy. We have great kids. In addition to that, we also have 450 graduates who are going to go out and serve the community in a variety of ways. There is a very good chance that everyone in this room came across a Lakewood graduate in some capacity today, whether that graduate is this year or in the past. I imagine we have kids that are working on hail damage like crazy. And so thank you to all the kids that are out there doing some of the jobs that are supporting our community in other ways. My priority as the principal of Lakewood High School are 2 things: to make sure that our students get the best education possible and that our students are safe. And so one of the concerns that I have about where we're going with this conversation is sidewalks. We do not have an unbelievable amount of sidewalks that feed into Lakewood High School. I would love for 50% of our students to walk to school every day. There is no reason, one of the reasons why we have 2 buses versus Golden, if you look at Golden's map, I imagine they have 15 to 20 buses. Mr. Bell might know that better than myself, but they have a huge area. We are landlocked, like Mr. Roybal said, which means we don't need as many buses. In theory, like Mr. Elliott mentioned, kids could walk or bike to Lakewood High School. We know that's not the case. And the reality is we don't have enough sidewalks to ensure that safety. So I would encourage, as we look at different, oh, sorry, I see the stop. I would encourage that we continue to look at how we improve sidewalks, how we improve encouraging and incentivizing kids to get to school in creative ways that maybe doesn't include cars. And I want to make sure that our community is supported. Lakewood is more than just the students, more than just the teachers, more than just the families. It is, in fact, that community that surrounds our building, which includes our grandparents that go to games. Coach Peterson's grandpa is one of my favorite fixtures at Lakewood baseball games, and I check in. I'll wrap it up in 10 seconds. And my concern is that if we have the parking on 9th, that discourages some of our people that come out to watch a game and support our greater community. And so I would encourage you to consider a moratorium on those signs for the summer as we work through this so that our families can come to games, support our kids, and make our community the best community possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You really did think you had 6,000 minutes. All right. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am. Amira, come on up. No, go ahead. Come on. Yep.
I'm glad for Lakewood High School that you are moving forward on a multi-year issue that's serious for a wonderful school. You have a committee to take some action. I'm glad for Charlie and his gang over there to deal with their issue in Ward 3. I'm disappointed tonight that this seems that we're leaving with the impression that we only have 2 problems with parking in Lakewood, and that's adjacent multifamily neighborhoods and adjacent high schools. I have spoken with over 100, if not more, residents in the last just 3 months. I have spoken with Adam Paul, Barb Franks, Dave Wickman for the last 10 years and counting. There are hundreds, if not thousands of us, and I guess after tonight I'll call it an inside neighborhood, a residentially zoned neighborhood that is nowhere near multifamily dwellings and that is nowhere near a high school. And we have major parking issues. We have major neighbor issues because of the parking issues. So Lakewood, when it started increasing its density in the 80s with a new style of development, wonderful cul-de-sac style neighborhoods, which I love. That's why I chose to live in a cul-de-sac neighborhood, to raise my child in a place where she could ride her tricycle, her skateboard, her whatever, play on the street. But these cul-de-sac neighborhoods with small lots and less frontage than the original Lakewood lots, or many of the grid streets in northern Lakewood, do not accommodate the 7 vehicle per household allowance that Lakewood still allows, despite how many times it's been raised here at City Council and at ward meetings and with some of you privately. So while Lakewood went ahead to change its development style into a higher density, even in single-family neighborhoods, and we've reduced that even further since 2012, we didn't get rid of the old, now outdated 7 vehicles per household. That's what's causing the conflict in these neighborhoods. And these neighborhoods, too, need to be addressed. This is a major parking issue that was not mentioned tonight, except alluded to by Mr. Heald, Ms. Springsteen, Ms. Duffy. And it's related to the issue over near Lakewood Estates and can be solved with some of the same issues or solutions. But this is a major issue. And I really ask you, after 15 years of experiencing this problem firsthand, that Lakewood Council and zoning, because they're intertwined, they're not separate. You cannot deal with the parking issue without dealing with the zoning issues. I please ask you to deal with this issue as well. Secondly, I must respectfully disagree. Perhaps the Commerce City police officers do not like enforcing it, but as a homeowner in Commerce City as well, in Frontera Village, Buffalo Run, Reunion, Buffalo Mesa neighborhoods, north of 96, all the new building that has gone on there, we are thankful and grateful that we are time limited with parking in front of a residence, that a residential property owner has recourse, which we do not have in Lakewood. And when we call our understaffed Lakewood police, that I'm all in favor of hiring more of, and it sounds after tonight like we need to hire some specific traffic or parking enforcement people. But we are very grateful for having the ability to have recourse. And regardless of how many times somebody actually signs a complaint, it's a big deterrent. I can assure you it's a big deterrent. And the neighborhoods that we have there do not look like my neighborhood in Lakewood and Ward 4. They are not covered with parking, with vehicles of all types on both sides, making it no longer safe or feasible for our children to play, our families to walk with strollers, and simply to enjoy the properties that we invested in. So I please ask you to consider addressing as well the parking issues within residential neighborhoods, because it is an issue, and that ties into the zoning and the number of vehicles allowed per household. And it's only going to get worse when we start looking at the short-term rentals that were discussed here a couple of meetings ago and making that legal. If 300 to 600 people are operating illegally, how many more are going to be operating once we make that legal? And then what's that going to do with the parking in those same neighborhoods? Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you very much. Pam?
I just wanted to thank you for deciding to move forward with a council. You may consider another person to be a part of that council is someone from the Parks and Rec, because they do use the fields and the facilities of the schools. And they, I have to say, living close to Lakewood, I have no complaints from the students. I have no complaints from the baseball team. They've done awesome job with cleaning up everything there. It looks great. I do believe that they need a loading zone. I think that was a very good idea. The people that I see that don't respect the postings that are there today are the people on the weekends. and that's our Parks and Rec. And so I just wanted to say that maybe they have a place at the table. Thank you.
And we'll just follow up on that. So the schools actually schedule the weekend usage, right?
That's right. The school schedules the weekends.
So, but we would certainly would have our parks folks part of any type of conversation, but the schools uniquely schedule their own facilities. All right, anybody else? Seeing none, I will close public comment. Ms. Franks, you have a comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to respond to Amara. If I wasn't clear about the focus groups, that's exactly what I meant, that we needed to look at parking holistically, but bring together the focus groups and then bring that together. So we weren't trying to exclude anyone. That was part of the dialogue, so I apologize if I wasn't more clear on that.
Ms. Shakti.
I would agree with that. And one of the issues is not just the 7-car, but the enforceability of that kind of rule. And also the discussion of how do we get kids to walk and bike, and what role does the city have in that, and what other resources are out there, I think could really be developed further and can be a part of that. So,
Ms. Johnson.
Thank you. Councillor Coop, I appreciate your comment regarding the signs going up. It may sound like it was willy-nilly, and I agree that we do need to have a better policy, but they happened over 5 years, and there were several petitions that were circulated. Many people within the neighborhood signed those petitions for the signage. So I just want you to understand that they just didn't happen overnight.
Okay, we'll go to councillor comments or councillor reports. I'll start all the way on my right. Councillor Coop, nothing. Councillor Wickman, Councillor Gutwein.
Two things. One, we had a great ward meeting. I'll let Karen talk about that more. And I just wanted to bring up an issue that some neighbors in Ward 5 have brought up about wood burning in fire pits over the summer, and to just please be mindful of your neighbors if you're going to use a wood burning and fire pit. Especially some of your neighbors might have asthma and that kind of stuff. And there's a really great information about it on the Lakewood website. And then you can also call if you feel like your neighbor is violating the restriction, 303-987-7111. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Franks.
Didn't have a report, but do have a comment. Do not try to break up one of those logs, the wax logs, quickly, because you will have a bonfire. I was one of those folks who tried to put it out quickly and 5-foot-high flames, so just be careful.
Harrison.
That sounds exciting. Big kudos to our two speakers that we had at Ward 5. Gary Hardy gave us a presentation on Cycling Without Age. What a phenomenal program. Those of you who don't know about it need to know about it, because I tell you, it will be a community builder. We also had Peggy Bocard from the Recreational Department talking about activities of all ages, and she did a phenomenal job. Please make sure she hears our thanks. Thank you very much.
Roybal.
No report.
Vincent. Mr. Abel.
No report, but I was remiss. Jay, you did a bang-up job in looking at this picture of parking everywhere and providing the background information, the maps. It was very well done. Thank you for all your work on that. And Chief, thank you as well.
Ms. Johnson?
No report.
Shakti?
I have like a lot of things. It's Inspire Arts Week. There's a million things going on. You probably have to go to the website to find out the specifics. Imagine Lakewood, so you can give feedback on what you want to have happen with Parks and Rec and that kind of thing. There are different meetings all over the city happening. The one in Ward 3 is at the Link. I can't see my whole note on the phone.
I have all the
Thursday at 2:00. And then Thursday at 6 p.m. in Belmar Park, you can learn about bats. When we don't have as many nature activities in Belmar Park, so it's kind of exciting. Then Friday, there's a fundraiser, $25, 6 to 10 at the Heritage Center to raise money to fix up the firehouse at the Heritage Center. Saturday, 8 to 9, you can volunteer to work on trails at Green Mountain Park. And then Saturday evening, 5 to 10, it's a rock and block party at Belmar Park.
Okay, and to expand on that, the Imagine Lakewood Public Open House, there's 4 of them. Tuesday, June 6th from 2 to 4 at the Clements Community Center, 1580 South Yarrow. 6 to 8 p.m. at the Bear Valley Church, 10,001 West Jewel Avenue. And then Thursday the 8th, 2 to 4 at the Lakewood Link, and 6 to 8 p.m. at Green Mountain Rec Center. So you can also check out all this stuff on the lakewood.org-imagine. It'd be great to have folks come out, participate. This is to help lend your feedback to the future of our arts, recreation, and parks in the city of Lakewood. We're updating the plan, so it's critically important that we hear from you. Had a great event at the Art Line at Aviation Park on Saturday to start to look at some of the new art installations that are going to go at Aviation, Mount Air, and Walker Branch. The 40 West Farmers Market kicked off, and then had a great opportunity to go with Councilor Coop to a playground reopening at a community that didn't have a very nice playground on 17th and Kendall. And CU architecture students did some crowdfunding and raised about $35,000, and then worked together throughout the semester to work with the kids to see what those kids wanted, and they put together a beautiful playground for some kiddos who probably wouldn't have had that opportunity. So that was fantastic. And then I'll leave you with a little bit of a nerdy thing, but the Supreme Court ruled today in a case called Villaggio, which was really, it had to do with the arbitration clause and construction defects litigation. Many years ago, the city of Lakewood was the first community to pass an ordinance to deal with that, to try to spur condo development. We haven't had a condominium built in the city since 2006. Arbitration clause was a big deal. It's something that we couldn't get through at the state legislature. The state Supreme Court upheld that today, 5-2, that says that you can have an arbitration clause in your declarations. So we had some legislation that passed with the great help of our city support, and now we have this. So hopefully we'll start to see some owner-occupied housing, multifamily housing in the city of Lakewood, which is desperately needed. That's all I have. Michelle, anything? Ms. Hodson.
Yeah, just a few things. Thank you. Next week, June 12th, you have a special meeting, which is an executive session at 5:30. And then the regular meeting, of course, at 7, a recognition, Senior Heroes Award winners. It's our first reading ordinance of the Historic Preservation Committee's designation of the O'Kane Farm. So that'll be first reading. And then under general business, we'll have a discussion around your priorities. Just a reminder as well, today is June 5th, and on June 30th this month, we are going to say goodbye to our long-term employee, Carol Gosnell. June 30th is her last day. It happens also to be her birthday. She's worked for the city in the city manager's office for 37 years. Please make sure to spend a moment with her in her office. She doesn't want any party, and believe me, we've tried, so she wants nothing. So please go and bug her and say goodbye and wish her well. Also, we have recently hired her replacement, Donna Rep, and she's shadowing Carol during for the duration of this month, and training wheels will be off on July 1, so I think you'll really enjoy her. We stole her from the Department of Planning. And finally, Devin Giblin, who's been in an interim position for at least a couple of weeks. She's been hired in a permanent capacity. So we are set now, at least as it relates to the administration of the city manager's office. So just wanted to mention that. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to say something real quick about Carol, and I have a question for you. So Carol has served 6 mayors and 7 city managers, or is it flipped? I think it's 6 mayors and 7 city managers. So that tells you the knowledge, and the amount. She knows everything.
And the patience that she has.
And bless her heart, the paper that she uses. Right.
She uses a lot of paper.
And she knows shorthand, which to me was amazing.
Yeah, and she's a dear.
Real quick, Colorado Mills, and I know that's of great interest for many reasons, and I know you may read articles and you may see different things, and we sponsored a job fair, or we are sponsoring a job fair. I'll just say it's been quite challenging for the city of Lakewood to get information out of the parent company. Now, the management of the mills is wonderful. Kimmer does a great job. But what you tend to see on television is pretty much what we tend to hear or see the same. So it's unfortunate. We'll try to keep the community apprised as we know. I don't know if you have anything else to add or if Nanette does, but it's been challenging for us as well.
I can just tell you that they're working diligently to restore, replace, and do what they can to get them all up and operating. So don't have a lot more information beyond that, but they are working hard.
That's 2,000 to 3,000 jobs. Some folks have found other areas, and hopefully through these job fairs we can get those folks.
And I'm not sure I mentioned before, it's amazing to realize that mall is 1.3 million square feet. That's a lot of space for restoration.
Cool. So that's it. Again, thank you very much to everybody, and thanks for hanging out with us. We are adjourned at 10:30. We can go celebrate Pete's birthday.